Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My beloveds, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. You are live at this moment in time in the studio of GuidanceCast podcast, Alhamdulillah. And I am your host, Imran Muhammad. And guess what? My co-host, Sidi Moulay, Shaykh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here on GuidanceCast once again. Today is a bit of a journey looking at various aspects of an individual's life that myself and Shaykh Imran, we're going to interview somebody today. If you've seen the poster, you'll know what it's about. But if you haven't, I want to know why. Why do you not get our poster? Why do you not follow our stuff and get the notifications? So please, before we start, do a bit of sadaqah, a bit of charity by liking the video to up the algorithm, as they say, but also share it. Share it in your WhatsApp status, put it on Facebook, share it to somebody you know and your family members. Say, watch this podcast with Shaykh Imran, brother Waseem Ahmed, and who we got with us today, Shaykh Saab?
And the person that we have today, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, is a fascinating human being. Wallahi, Shaykh. It's a great honor to have him. And I'm really grateful that he has chosen to come and have a chat with us and conversation with us. His life is fascinating.
MashaAllah.
Being a person who, Alhamdulillah, who has had a not only journey within this country, but also outside of this country.
Yes.
Been to a ton of places. I don't know how many places he's been to, which we're going to talk about.
We'll talk about that, right.
Engaging with the Buddhists and also engaging with people on Malaysia Beach and all of that going on as well. But let me say this. He is a child of a Catholic Polish mother and a Catholic Scottish father. How does it feel to be English Mancunian?
To brother Yusuf.
Yusuf Ponders, Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. MashaAllah.
Wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ahlan wa sahlan.
How you doing?
I'm fine, Alhamdulillah. It's an honor to have you, Sayyidi.
No, it's an honor to be here. Jazakallah khair for having me.
So my question was, being a son of these two individuals and then coming out as an English Mancunian, which I believe I heard you say, people don't call me English. They call me something else.
No, I don't belong to anyone, apparently.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with...
No Polish jokes today, right?
No. Polish.
Yeah.
Because when I was growing up, the English would say I was 50% Scottish, 50% Polish.
Yeah.
But the Scottish would call me English and the Polish would call me English, so no one would have...
That identity thing, isn't it?
Yeah. What makes someone something?
Yeah.
And
so what do you identify as? Let's get to that. British?
I probably identify as just English.
Okay.
Just because for me, like when I go to Scotland, I don't feel Scottish. I feel like
you're part of this culture and this
Well,
upbringing.
I was born here. I was raised here.
That's it. Yeah. Your community, your surroundings was all this, right? World.
I have a tendency towards English food.
Fish and chips.
Yeah. I have an English accent.
No, what is it? Haggis.
Haggis.
Yeah.
No. Sheep stomach.
Sheep stomach thing. Yeah.
No, I've never really had an inkling towards.
All right.
Never had the stomach for it.
But for me, like a big part of, obviously there's like heritage people talk about, and there's a whole debate to be had about what makes someone something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a funny thing, and I consider myself English, although I've never really felt like super English either at the same time.
What's the difference between super and normal English?
Super English is like patriotic, get the English tattoo, the England flag. You love the Queen.
King now, yeah.
Yeah, or King now, yeah.
You rattle your pants for the NHS?
Yeah, well, I didn't do that, but I'm very grateful.
I am very grateful. I have experienced the NHS and I'm very grateful. Yeah, but I think they felt a bit belittled by that in the end. The rattling of the pants for them, because they're there in the front line taking it all. Yeah. And we just rattling pants for them. Things. Yeah, it's like, But anyway, that's another topic.
Yeah. But it's it's an interesting thing as well. But like, there's things I'm very grateful for. I like being here.
On that very point, that's what, when you said, English, and I identify as British, I think, and I was speaking to somebody the other day at a funeral, I think, we really appreciate the opportunity we've got here in this country. There are issues. Come on, there's stuff going on all over the world. But look, we've got freedom, we've got opportunity, we've got resources. Yeah. We're sitting here today doing this. People are watching. We're really in a very, privileged position because of what we have in this country.
We live a life better than many things lived even 100 years ago.
Trust me, yeah.
So there's a lot to be grateful for, alhamdulillah. But like you said, there's also things to complain about. But it's the same wherever you are.
Yeah. But isn't that very English?
Complain. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It
we've
is.
got to complain. Come on, don't you got to allow us to complain a
I
bit.
always say that. I go, when the sun comes out, I'm just waiting for that first comment. Oh, it's too hot in here.
It's too hot.
All right,
Yeah.
I want the rain. When the rain's
the
out,
rain,
when the
yeah,
rain's
yeah.
out, oh, it's gone too wet out here. Do you know what I mean? I've enough. And
The grass is always greener on the other side.
It always
mentality.
is.
But yes, but it's a weird one. And like I said, there's a huge debate to be had about it. Like because when I speak to them and I say, so why do you think I'm 50% Polish, 50% Scottish? The answer usually is, oh, well, your mum's from Poland and your dad's from Scotland. I was like, okay, so my dad's Scottish because he's from there and my mum's Polish because she's from there. So why am I not English?
Because I'm from
here.
here.
And then it's like, well, no, you've got a heritage there. It's well, no, not really. Like McLaughlin, my second name, Mick functions the same way Ibn does.
Okay, son of, right?
The son of.
Oh,
And there's,
clock.
in English, you have Richardson, the son of Richard.
Yeah, Richardson.
In
the
Irish,
long
you have
son,
like
yeah.
O'Neill, the son of Neil.
O'Neill, yeah.
Mick, it functions the same way.
Scottish, yeah.
And Lachlan was, so McLaughlin, it's the son of the foreigner, and it was
Ah,
related to the Viking settlers.
Right, so you're
So-
actually
so-
not
yeah, so
really Scottish.
So I have this about you. Do you know what I mean? Because when I started to look into you, started to learn about you, right? And I wrote it down as well. And I go, you are a foreigner, but the most of the time you are seen as a British white person because the way you look.
You'd be surprised. A lot of people pass me off as very Eastern European. I get
that, yeah.
told I look Russian, I look
Polish.
Swedish,
Lithuanian.
Viking. Some people think I look Syrian, but that's
Wow.
only since I became a Muslim.
Right,
And
okay.
it's only the Muslims that think I look Syrian.
Right.
Because they see me and I say, Assalamu alaikum. They go, he must be from...
Iraqi or Syrian.
There's no way he's a reader.
See, the most powerful thing is that it's really ajib. And coincidentally, that's why we wanted to start the conversation like this. Because we have a tendency to box ourselves, or people tend to stick us into a box.
Yeah.
You are this, you are that. So some individuals, they have a very single identity crisis. And the reality is identity is very complex. Identity, I'm many things at one time. I'm Pakistani, I'm Kashmiri, I'm British, I'm English, I'm this and I'm that. And if we went according to the hadith of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, anyone who speaks Arabic is an Arab. Do you understand? And that makes it really complicated then.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So you are not one thing, but you are many things, would you say?
Yeah, there's a tendency for people, I think, to like things to be simple. They want to be able to just put themselves into a particular box. I am this, I am that. And when you can't do that, it can cause a lot of anxiety. And I think that's a lot. Like if you speak to a lot of people, for example, that are mixed race, or they have
dual heritage or multi-heritage or whatever,
there can often be an identity crisis because they don't really, like even a lot of people that I know that have like a Pakistani heritage that were born, raised here, second, third generation, when they go back to Pakistan, have described themselves as feeling not very Pakistani when they're next to people that have been born and raised there. And they start to feel very English, like they miss the English temperature. They miss.
But I think all of
English
that,
things.
and you obviously have been on the journey, regardless of, and it's important, I'm not dismissing it, but I think that what kind of supersedes all of that is Islam, isn't it? Like your identity truly, regardless of the colour of your skin, the country you're born in, your heritage, your parents, your culture, you're a servant of Allah, you're a Muslim. You want to live this life true to your Lord, to your purpose. And these are things we should be celebrated and shared.
Yeah, definitely.
And I hope they are, alhamdulillah.
And I think this is a very beautiful thing about Islam in particular, because when you're looking at like heritage, in terms of like your ancestry, where your people come from, it can be very arbitrary. And for me, I always thought I was Scottish. I never even knew about my second name having like a relation to Vikings. On my mum's side in Poland, I only know as far as my granddad. And not just there, there's a huge link. Like every time Germany and Russia fell out, Poland disappeared. And so there's potential links I have to Russia, to even on my mum's side to Vikings, potentially. Because the Rus also have a connection to Viking settlers that would push out. It's all very arbitrary. And it's like, the reason people look at me and maybe say Polish because my mum's Polish is because we only know how far my family history goes. But maybe 2-3 generations down the line, the Polish might not have even considered my family Polish. They may have been settlers from somewhere else. And so it's like, where do you want to draw the line? And it's all very wibbly wobbly. And at the end of the day, who really cares? Like I like to know my heritage to a certain degree, but I don't get so hung up on it that I get angry at other people about it. And I think the beauty of Islam, Malcolm X, I think, really touched on this really, really well, where he talks about his experience in Mecca.
In Hajj,
and Hajj, and like how that, because he was from a very sort of ethnocentric background where he was very isolationist in terms of different races should just segregate and keep to themselves. And then he had a very different experience when he went to Mecca, because it was like you have all these different people from all over the world.
The whitest of the white skin, the bluest of the bluest eyes. I had ate food with him, stood beside him in my prayer. Wow.
He mentions that,
and it's a for anyone who's not read the book, or there's even a film about him. It's a really good film.
I recommend
Denzel Washington's, especially, not the other one. That one, that's brilliant.
Alex Haley, I think, wrote the biography. It's an amazing book. I think that book is a book that for many of us probably changed our whole lives and our whole thought process and identity-wise where we're going in life. There's a big, huge impact on me when I read the book.
It's a brilliant book. But there's still a strand as well that it's sort of quite important, because we're going to touch on this as well. Where he even notes, still even there though, despite the fact that we can learn to get along and we can learn to build bridges between these different communities in places like Mecca, that birds of a feather still flock together. Like you still see,
of course,
like all of the Indonesians. It's
natural,
And it's because the human being does have a natural tendency to not want to stand out. And
there is that as well, Sidi Yusuf. But at the same time, it's also the host communities, right? We have a tendency. It happened in this country, for example. Oh, they all live together. Oh, they're all in the central towns and cities. Oh, they're all in that part. Oh, they're in Bradford. They're all stuck in Bradford. They're all in Leicester. They're all in Blackburn. Do you know what the hell they're doing? Do you know what I mean? Look at these people. They only want to stick to their own people. And the problem was that, let's get this straight. If you look at the evolution of the people that were coming into an immigration basis, they didn't have the language. A lot of them, even if they did, when they were sent to different parts of the country, and we know this of Syrian refugees that have come to this country, that their experience is this, that they've gone to some very isolated places. Now they can't find halal food, right, in them places. There's no mosques there. The communities themselves, they're the beautiful community, nice. Some of them are very good communities, but others aren't. They're not very hospitable. There's a friend of mine, his grandfather, in fact, had a barber shop, I believe, in Scotland somewhere when he used to live from Manchester, moved from Manchester, went all to Scotland. Now, within months of being there, his shop had been bombed I don't know how many times. Petrol bombed I don't know how many times. Now, there has also been a hostility culture within these societies. And what happens? That's where we're into our own small groups. People that are familiar,
feel more safe.
Feel more safe.
Definitely.
Safety net.
So, but there is a habit I'm saying simple people. I don't mean it in a derogatory sense, but like maybe a better word is the average little Englander. Like they tend to complain about things they are themselves the cause of. So I grew up in a council estate, North Manchester, and when we were little, my estate in particular was a very white estate. On my street, I think one family, and I can't remember whether they were black or Pakistani. I don't know. All I know is that they were foreign, and they had poo put on their door handles, fireworks put through their letterboxes. People would urinate there, and so. When people did move onto the estate, they were made to feel very uncomfortable very quickly, and they left immediately for their own safety. So they would complain, and in Bury in particular, there was quite a large, in Springs Estate, I think it is. Right. There's a very large Pakistani presence or subcontinent presence. And so generally they would move there. Why? Because there's a lot of ease there. There's a lot of people that are familiar. There's a support network, there's mosques, there's halal food. Whereas you're not going to get that in Radcliffe as much. Obviously, there's always exceptions to the case, like there's where people do.
You were around, and look, when I was looking into yourself and your life, alhamdulillah, amazing life you've had. May Allah give you barakah, inshallah, to increase you by many folds. Your early years, of course, being brought up in this country, of course, being in a council state, being around certain type of people with certain ideologies and views. And I came across that you had been exposed to a lot of extreme views of people. Some people were they would have tattoos with swastikas on.
Yeah.
They would walk around with saying something on their head like a Nazi SS type of, memorabilia or type of tattoos and that type of, stuff that was going on in that.
So
particular
it was
community.
like fancy dress for Halloween. It wasn't super common, but there were like one friend, his dad would dress up as a skinhead, and then walk to the pub, and he would have like a.
This is on Halloween.
Yeah. And that like he was able to do that and not be confronted.
Yeah, no,
like he could walk all the way. It wasn't like he went to his local pub either. He went like a good 20-30 minutes down the road to the next one. And and he went there, spent the night there, and came back. So
because it was interesting
it was
because
relatively-
yourself, Yusuf, that being around that type of culture, right, and maybe hearing about how black people are, or Asians are, or Muslims are, or whoever they were, on the receiving end of some of the statements and language that was being used, that you still went down a different route of discovery for yourself.
So for me, although, like for example, with that, I wouldn't necessarily get that affected by because I was still in a different situation. So I did have friends that were from different backgrounds. My mum was Polish.
Yeah.
So I had family that were foreign, and I also had this thing because Polish people get a bit of stick as well. My mum had to deal with that. I had to deal with that. My dad being Scottish, he was very anti-English, and so he sort of instilled that in me a little bit while he was around. And so like I didn't necessarily absorb that that racism, so to speak. And I always found it strange, or I always felt myself other from it, even though sometimes it would be around me.
So on that point, you mentioned you were around different people. That's interesting. So what was the community like, your friends, your school? Did that help? Obviously it did help, or it did factor into your journey, but what was it like? What was around you basically? What was going on?
Well, it depends the time of my life. So like when I was really young, like I'm talking from my earliest memories up until high school.
Yeah.
So during primary school time, I had a group of friends that just used to live on my estate. And we would just, little rascals, we used to go onto the fields and break into warehouses.
Yeah, play around.
Yeah, mess about and play.
So who are these friends like?
Just childhood friends that lived on the estate, so with another white kids.
Yeah. And then they said secondary school do you go college?
So towards secondary school,
Sixth form.
The high school that I went to was a bit more. I wouldn't say it was super diverse, but there were, people like there was a couple of people from Pakistan in my class in particular. There was only maybe 2 or 3, so it wasn't like vast majority. Whereas you compare that to like my daughter's school now, it's like 60%
Wow.
Subcontinent
of the students are Muslim.
Muslim, okay.
Yeah. And this is a very large percentage. Whereas when I went to high school, it was maybe like, I don't know, maybe 5%. If
Wow.
there weren't many. So there was still like some connection there, but a lot of my friends were from a variety of different cultures. So
being around these type of individuals, different culture, different people, of course, slowly, having engagement of, like you said, your own personal experience of being the other, a foreigner.
Yeah.
Even though you
I could blend sometimes,
you can.
but other times like it would become obvious that I'm not English.
Yeah, and in fact, that's really interesting for a person who has engaged with more diverse communities after that. And one thing that came up, and it was very interesting, is you and your father, for example. And for me, that's been really interesting, because this is my day job. I work with a lot of convicts, people who are in prison, people who have done wrong, right, and they've turned up into these places, being incarcerated. And I believe your father had also gone to prison for this.
Yeah, he was always in and out of.
He was in and out.
Pretty much.
And what I want to know, and especially for our viewers and our listeners, is that this is something really difficult sometimes for people to talk about and discuss. But I want you to at least tell us from your position that, firstly, how was that as an experience as a child of someone who's gone into prison, which rips me apart. I have the opportunity to listen to family members and children and people like that of their experiences. But most of the time, I can't share that with the rest of the world
Yeah.
because it's really difficult.
So for me, when I was a kid, what was funny is I didn't know. I had no idea. What I was told was that my dad was in hospital when he was in prison. If we ever went to visit him, obviously the prisoners would wear...
It's a very Pakistani thing, isn't it, Shaykh? We do the same thing. I was going to Pakistan.
Just cover it up with the mask or something else. But so we were told he was in hospital. We would go visit him. All the prisoners would have bibs on. And they would say, oh, yeah, no, it's just they've been playing football. So it's like bibs versus non-bibs.
Yeah.
And then, and with regards to his drug addiction as well, we were told that was his medicine. And I have memories of him doing it in front of me as well. So me and my brother I have a vivid memory of me and my brother playing in the sink in the bathroom, playing with soap and making potions, quote unquote. And my dad sat down on the toilet behind me with tinfoil from a Kit Kat that we'd saved him, with his heroin on the top of it, and burning it with a Bic pen tube.
Wow.
And he was chasing the dragon.
Wow.
So, and I remember that, and he just normalized it. It was like, it wasn't a strange thing to us. And so at the time, like, it wasn't something that would have distressed me. I remember just playing with my potions with my brother. And and then if he was in and out of prison, we just was like it was a normal part of life. It wasn't that strange. Sometimes he was there, sometimes he wasn't. And obviously he had his own sort of behavioural issues related to the fact that he did go in and out of prison, and related to his drug abuse. So sometimes he was known as Jack the Lad. He was a very funny guy. He had the gift of the gab.
Mashallah.
And everyone that met him seemed to really like him. And yeah, so he was quite easy to get on with. But when he was strung out, or if he hadn't had any for a little while, he would go on his mission. So once he stole one of my neighbour's cars, because they just used to leave the car running to warm up the engine in the winter, and he must have walked past because he was on his way to Salford to look for something, and saw the car was just running, so he got in the car, just drove off, picked up his stuff, came back and left a note saying sorry, but thank you, essentially.
Awesome.
And then parked the car back where it was supposed to be, and then went back home.
Borrowing.
Yeah, borrowing. But like usually there was like a shift in his behavior. So he'd be like super happy, dead, like go lucky type. He would take us out and show us how to steal. Which was a very strange thing. But he would normalize it. So I remember going in, Bury.
Yes.
The Market Street, the main one.
Yeah.
There was a newsagents there.
Yeah.
And we always used to go into there, and then we would wait in the queue, and then he would just grab what he wanted and go, you know what, I don't want anything. And then he'd get off, but he'd have it on him. And he would never go to the shop normally. He always used to jump over the back fence into the neighbour's garden, then go nick something and come back.
Wow.
This is amazing because he became your main male model. Do you understand? Someone that you would see. He's your dad.
Yeah.
He's someone around you. Do you understand? And that's something I tend to work with a lot of young people myself. I come from a youth worker background, and many a times I see certain behaviors, and then I meet the parents, and I'm like, kids don't do what you say; they do what you do.
Now, but there's a strange thing about that as well, because it depends on the relationship that you have with your parent.
Yes.
So for me, I was a mummy's boy,
Ah.
and my dad, I had a strange relationship with him, and so he was very concerned about making me a man, and making sure that I was
toughening you up.
Yeah. And so he used to always try to make me do like exercises.
Press ups, get on
no pain, no gain.
That's it.
And he loved that saying. And I had to sweat, and it was like until like you're like, I can't do anymore. He's like, yeah, you can. You've got another 50 in you. And it's a hit. Like he had a massive emphasis on that, and he was always trying to. So he used to take us for walks in the dark, and we would go onto the field, and he wouldn't take a torch, and we'd have to walk in the night with him.
Wow.
And keep in mind, he died.
I'm loving this,
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about it. Is it traumatizing?
No, it's powerful because
I think that's character building, resilience.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. So these are things I could say I do appreciate. He was very. He put a big emphasis on like protecting the family and loyalty to family.
That's right.
Really good.
And he's like never run away from a fight. He wasn't necessarily like a really big guy. He's maybe a bit shorter than I am. And but he never ran away from a fight. He was known as someone who was very aggressive, and he would the thing he would say is like, if you get outnumbered, look at the tallest and the biggest one, the one who looks the meatiest, and say, I'll batter you first, and then once I'm done with you, then I'll move on to the next person. And if you go for the biggest one, his philosophy is that person would be scared because he has the most to lose. And he would question, why is this guy so confident? Why has he picked the biggest guy
That's right.
for a fight? And then when he bottles it, everyone else gets nervous because they're like, why is the biggest guy?
I think this is the William Wallace ideology. Go for the biggest guy, done.
There was another time where there was a couple of lads who were potheads, and they nicked 20 quid off my brother. And they had a little caravan in their front garden, and they used to just sit in it and waste away pretty much all day, every day. And then my brother went and told my dad they've nicked 20 quid off me, but it was a Scottish £20 note, because every time we went to Scotland, my family would give us money, and it's legal tender.
Yeah.
So we would bring it back and try and spend it here. But he went to show it off to these kids, and they nicked it off, and they were only like 16 or something. And then my dad went to the corner shop and asked the shop owner, who's been in here with a £20 note from Scotland.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, these two kids came in and they bought some cigarettes.
Yeah.
So my dad bought some petrol, and then he went to the caravan
And torch.
in the middle of the day, and then just covered the caravan in petrol and set it on fire. And then my mum's come home from work, and there's a fire brigade there. There's this thing that's just burning, and all of the neighbours are stood there. My mum's like, believe me, what's happened? And
Dad just calmly just.
no, my dad wasn't there.
Oh, right,
He got off, but
Yeah.
all of the neighbours knew it was him. And so
Right.
my mum stood with the neighbours. All the neighbours know it's my mum's partner that's set it on fire. And my mum's like, what's going on? And she's found out from the people there. But everyone hated these two kids.
So they weren't bothered.
So they were all like, oh yeah, no, they're just buzzing.
Yeah,
Because
wow.
they hated this caravan as well. It was a proper little DOS.
For me, I've always seen this, that I always say to individuals that regardless of what your occupation of your parents may be, if they love you, if they care for you, if they give you the best that they can under the circumstances, you have to honor them.
Yeah, so this is where I guess it gets a bit more complex. Because so with my dad, I could he did try to instill in me things like courage and bravery and being strong and loyalty and these kind of things. But he, at the same time, that could, like they say, there's every action can in some way have a positive to it, but it could also have a negative. So his obsession with this also had a bit of a negative impact on me. So like he would be a bit too aggressive. Like even when I was a baby, I was told, I don't remember because I was only one, but they'd left me with him for a little bit. And then at some point I wouldn't stop crying. So he'd sort of slap me on the bum until he'd bruised the entirety of my
Your
bottom.
bottom, yeah.
Wow.
Where it was properly black. And it's made my mum panic. And then my auntie and my grandma, who were his sister and mother, didn't say anything, and it proper weirded my mum out, and then they left. When we were a bit older, keep in mind, my dad died when I was about 9, so I was maybe six,
right.
Very
5,
sorry.
6.
Wow.
And me and my brother were playing with matches. My brother was only like a year and a half younger than me. And then my dad caught us playing with the matches, and I got a beating, but my brother didn't. My brother got cuddled. So I was like a mummy's boy, and my dad was obsessed with turning me into this man. But that led him to be quite harsh with me sometimes.
Yeah.
And my brother was a daddy's boy. So he would cuddle my brother. He would show a lot of love to my brother. My brother didn't have the same experience with my dad as I did. So although he would try and do things, like he used to try to teach me to litter, but I couldn't do it. He was a massive football fan. I could never like football. My brother did. And I don't know if it had something to do with that. Like although my dad tried to teach me these things, at the time, it wasn't necessarily something I thought was good. I didn't know any better. So the benefits side of things could have been, I don't know. It was a long time ago, and I was very young. So I just have memories of doing it. Like I have memories of doing press-ups with him.
Yes.
Like I have memories. I can't remember too much about how I felt about it at the time. I just remember seeing him, and I remember doing so.
and doing that. And I think as human beings, we have a tendency to at least find some positivity in that, and we remove the trauma side from it over time. And one of the areas I work in is that I deal with individuals who they're in 30s, 40s, and 50s, and then suddenly they've come to me. They go, "Oh, I have immense anxiety. I can't move on. Life's really thrown curveballs at me, and I don't know what to do." And then suddenly, I've gone through a particular type of process with them. I'm doing time life therapy with them or something like that, and you get to a point they think, oh, they were 7 years old, they had a very traumatic experience, and they didn't know how to deal with that at that particular time. Do you understand? And now he or she knows how to do that, but they don't know how to unhinge themselves from that particular feeling. Now, with yourself, which I know, as you said, your father died when you were about 9 years old, which in itself, of course, would have been a very traumatic experience, very difficult experience for you. Then you started to engage and associate with individuals outside of home, right? So you became, kid of the street. You started to, be part and parcel of that. Then you started to engage with individuals from different cultures. How was that coming from a predominantly a white structure, even though you were a foreigner in that particular context, but now associating with people who were Asian or Pakistani or even Muslim?
Yeah. So although my area was predominantly white, so I did have. So in school, for example, in primary school, one of my friends was a brown lad, and I can't remember where he was from exactly. But even because I can't say it, I'll have to spell it. But the P word.
Yes.
P-A-K-I.
Yeah.
So in my area,
Pakistani.
Without the
okay, that word.
minus the Stani.
You can say Pakistani instead.
Pakistani.
It doesn't have the same venom.
That was the point. So people would say it very commonly about the corner shop. They would say, "Oh, it's the P word shop."
Yeah. Okay.
They wouldn't say it was the Pakistani shop.
No, I get the point. Yeah.
And that was normalized for me. So I had no idea there was any problem with it.
Yes.
And I was in primary school. I'd have been about year 2 probably.
That still happens today, by the way.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. People, children at primary school especially, they'll say words not knowing it's derogatory, and they'll get in trouble for it. But then when they interview them or they talk to them, because a lot of it's on YouTube sometimes or wherever they get it from. Maybe
for me it was like the people on my street, everyone, exactly. Like my mates' dads. If I ever
it was normalized.
So they would say it, and it would not make anyone uncomfortable.
Yeah. But it's similar to Shaykh, and I want to bring this in. It's similar to our communities. Like in my community, if you went past a pub, they go mutter. They would use that word, right, which is urination. That it smells like this. Or they would say gore. Gore. Gore means white.
Yeah.
What do you mean white? Do you know what the hell does that mean? Do you know what I mean? You made it a bit generic. Come here. Do you understand? There are certain terms that we use. It's not that what we're trying to put forward is that
it's the context that makes it either okay or derogatory.
Yeah.
And so for me, I didn't realize there was any sort of venom ever used in it. It was just a word that I would hear. And even when they would say it, they didn't necessarily say it in a venomous way. They would just like, "Oh, I'm going to go down to the XYZ shop." And it just sounded normal. Like they weren't trying to hurt anyone's feeling. There was no one's feeling there to hurt. Like there was no one around. It was just us. And so I would hear this. And then I think I must have described my friend with this word.
Yep.
And he obviously got very upset with that and told the teacher. And then I remember getting in trouble.
Yeah.
And I remember not understanding at all
why I'm in trouble.
Why I was in trouble. I was like, and I remember him sat across from me, like you are now, looking very upset with me, and the teacher pretty much telling me off and shouting at me, and me crying because I don't understand why my friend's not my friend anymore. And I'm like, I don't know what you think I've done, but I've not done that. Like and since then I can't say that word. And I have friends that try and get me to say it.
Who are from
and a few of them are sitting in this room.
and I just can't say it. It just makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, because of your.
I get anxious about it.
Wow.
And so I had friends in primary school because I went to a Catholic school, and I think his family were Catholic. I can't remember where they were from heritage-wise. My mum's best friend, her children, although she was white, her children were mixed race.
Okay.
They were black, and we called them my cousins because her best friend we called auntie.
Auntie.
Very similar in our cultures. We do the same.
Yeah.
Some next person who lives down there, Uncle G.
No, family friends. So it's family.
Yeah, but when growing up, we didn't know. We thought like my brother. There was a funny circumstance where my brother was like, we all ended up in the same school together.
Yeah.
And someone was going on. He's like, no, this is my cousin. And they're like, what do you mean it's your cousin? He doesn't look anything like you. He's like, what do you mean you don't look? Can you not tell we're cousins? And we're not cousins. We don't have any blood relation whatsoever. And my brother had thought that we were actually family.
It's so close.
Yeah. And so I had, but they didn't necessarily live on my estate. We used to go out of the way to meet them. So it's not that I never had interactions. And I think this is as well why I couldn't really relate to like the sort of the bigoted element when it did arise. It always made me feel uncomfortable. I couldn't.
But at the same time, there is also this, isn't it? Look, I've had the opportunity to work with the far right extremists and individuals, and today I am in a place where a few of them are very close friends of mine. Individuals who were in that world, who have removed them from that world.
Well, I've got friends who were as well. They became Muslim.
There you said it, mashallah. And it's fascinating because they themselves. It's the same thing what you said earlier that it was just normal. That was normal behavior, normal language, normal type of interaction. It wasn't that there was venom or nothing behind it. But suddenly when it becomes a political problem, when it's on the media, when it's in the newspaper, and politicians in high powerful positions start saying this name and this person and that person, and what is normal, what we think is on a daily basis not that venomous, suddenly becomes venomous.
Yeah.
Yeah, on that very point, we live in that world right now, and I want to I'll get your thoughts on this because you've been through it, right? You're talking about how you had an experience with a certain community, but then when you went to another community and you kind of that diversity or exposure, it helped you, and you weren't from that. That was just the default, right? It wasn't like you wanted to be in like the racist or whatever was around you, so you didn't become one, mashallah. But the thought that I had, I'm asking you your thoughts on it, and Shaykh Saab, please do, is we as the migrant community, we've come here. You're probably from that same category, right? If you look at your roots, and we're a part of the society. We live here. We want to be accepted here. We don't feel like we're foreigners. I don't feel like that in the United Kingdom. But what can we do to help that conversation go forward? How can we bring everybody on board? I'm not saying we want to be accepted by anybody. I feel like that already, but there's people out there that haven't broken down those barriers yet. Yeah. And you've been through that. You've helped probably people break them down. Maybe how can we sort of help the narrative and help everybody move?
Yeah.
A positive step forward, because I think there's still people are like anti-Irish still and probably anti-Scottish rivalries. Okay, it's nice when it's in sports, in a bit of this, that, the other, but it shouldn't lead to hatred and bigotism and that kind of stuff.
So there's a number of things. It's not that there aren't necessarily reasons that certain individuals might have for having certain feelings. Like, for example, we had a little gang on our estate. It was really cringe, and it was like it was something that was passed on as well. So I had friends that were in something called the DPH. You remember DPH?
What's the DPH, Adnan?
The Juma's Potheads.
The
Juma's Potheads. And then there was down the road there was CLC.
CLC.
Cross Lane Crew.
Cross Lane Crew.
And but DPH, I remember when I was
these are all subcultures, say.
But when I was a kid, like I'm talking like when I was like 5, 6, 7, there was like 18-year-olds that were part of DPH, and I don't know if they even started it. I think they inherited it from someone.
Wow.
And then when we got older, there was other kids that just ended up taking on the mantle of DPH.
Right.
Yeah.
And
sounds good fun.
I don't know about that.
No, we don't.
I'm sure you got up to a lot of mischief. But
Yeah.
we call today.
There's some stories
we call them postcode wars, innit?
Postcode wars.
Yeah.
All of these particular subcultures had wars between them.
Yeah. To be honest, postcode. I don't know if that was more to do with London.
If you went too far down the road, you're in trouble, right?
Well, it depends, because like DPH and CLC could get on. We had like an alliance, quote unquote.
Okay.
So we
backdoor agreements.
Yeah, but Springs was very subcontinent based, and I don't know how it started, but there's been times where there's been a kick-off and someone's got battered, So then I don't even know what happened, but a large group of Pakistani lads came down from Springs to Juma's Lane looking for a fight. I don't think they knew exactly who they wanted to fight.
You say looking, they were cold.
And but they came to Juma's Lane, and then they just walked around sort of looking for groups of white lads, I guess, and then they found some, and one of the lads ended up getting bottled. And
wow.
He had a massive scar on his head. Now, he ended up being a little bit prejudiced, and it could have been in some way related to that experience, that he had this sort of negative interaction. And if we ever went to these places, you'd feel very uncomfortable there because you stood out, you feel very different. And there was a bit of sort of animosity between, say, like this predominantly white group of lads in Juma's Lane with this other group that was predominantly subcontinent. But the thing is, it's not like we never had interactions with people off other races.
Yeah.
Because there were some lads who lived on Juma's Lane.
So what you're saying is this feeds into that, lack of welcoming and getting along
and there would
the
be
experiences people have.
But they would still, and it's strange because they were still able to make exceptions. So they could say, oh no, he's not like
the rest of them, which is what I was going to get out to, because it's not like the whole skin color people get,
So some of them could recognize there were exceptions.
So I don't see that as a racial thing, in all honesty. I see that as territory or your gang, your whose back you've got kind of thing.
Yeah, but for the young and for the naive, they're not necessarily like thinking. It's very simple for them, so they can just look and try. What is it that makes him different than me? And there's some simple characteristics that they can point out. Yeah, he lives over there, but also he's brown, I'm white. He's Muslim, I'm not. And so
that classifies
very superficial ways of
but they can have these little sort of core experiences, we'll say, that feed into a prejudice that they end up holding when they get a bit older. So not all of them hold on to it forever. Like many, like for example, I still see a lot of these people from time to time because a lot of them are still friends with my brother. But their group is very mixed now. So,
so they've kind of
grown out of it.
And
it's not that, like, you could, if you get them along, they might still say the odd racist thing here and there. And there's certain things that they're worried about, like they're worried about immigration, they're worried about X, Y, and Z, and there's reasons for that. Whether they're justified or not is another matter. But they have their reasons for thinking and worrying about certain things. And I think in terms of talking about how do we sort of overcome it, what do we do? I think a big part of it is just patience and waiting, because what ends up happening is you have people that are, I would say, maybe inherently on the bridge, like myself, like where I don't feel English, I don't feel Scottish, I don't feel anything really, but I'm Muslim, and I can sort of blend with each group. So I can spend time with the Muslims, and although like there's certain characteristics that make me stand out as different, I can just chill and relax with you guys, and that difference doesn't make me feel uncomfortable. It's not something that causes
it enhances the experience.
Yeah, I can chill and be comfortable.
Enjoy yourself.
Yeah, but I can also go to my brother's house and I can chill with him, and if his friends come, I can blend. I don't stand out necessarily. They can look at me and think I am a part of that group.
I see your point, because you have been through that process. The Irish have, other cultures have, and it took time, didn't it?
Yeah.
And it probably still is there in small parts, but it does take time for people to overcome those prejudices, those biases, those kind of thoughts. And it's partly his education, it's just mixing with the other, getting to know them on a sort of human level, isn't it? Break bread together, as they say, right? And have a conversation. But I think those lack of experiences also feed into the...
Yes, but also because of these tensions that you get within communities, which are understandable, because, like, for example, if say someone from Pakistan comes to the UK, they would much rather... In the same, it doesn't matter where they're from. The British do it.
Yeah.
As much as they complain about it, we've got a lot of expats. We've even got a different word for it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that
South
move
of Spain,
away.
turn up. South of France, turn up. They're all English.
Yeah, but what do? Do they learn the language?
No, they don't.
No, they don't learn Spanish. They can. Well, you've probably got exceptions to the rule, as you always do. But they go. Where do they move? Do they go and embed themselves within the Spanish community?
No, they don't.
I wouldn't expect them to, but you know.
No, but it's, whether we're not expecting them is another
No,
matter.
But the thing
Right,
is,
right.
Do they do it?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
what Sidi Yusuf is saying, which I think is really interesting, is
yeah.
saying if the host community is expecting that from minorities to do that,
Yeah.
but when they themselves are minorities everywhere else, they don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
They stay within their own
Yeah,
community, their own culture.
But the other difference is that although they're from the same community, like the expat community are people that have left the UK and they've gone elsewhere and they've embedded themselves in a British community out there.
Out there.
But the ones complaining about people coming here and doing that are not the ones leaving themselves.
Yeah, they're the ones.
So
staying
although
here.
they're part of the same community, they're technically not as well. There is something that makes them distinct.
Different, yeah.
They are indigenous people remaining in their lands, quote unquote, and the indigenous that have left are completely distinct from them now because they're over there. So it's for them, they don't see it as hypocrisy.
Yes.
Because they're not the ones that have left.
Yes.
And all they see is something different that's very jarring. And we spoke about it a little bit. Like, for example, the British, we talked about it before, about when you're moving about how the brain can discount things and let things blend into the background when it's quite normal, when there's nothing that makes it stand out or there's nothing about it that seems significant. But the way the Muslim communities, obviously we come here, we've got many people from, like there's a Somali masjid in Bolton, there's the Pakistani masjid, you've got
India,
Gujarat.
there's a Sudanese masjid.
Yeah.
So every culture sort of comes, they gather, birds of a feather flock together, and then they put together a kitty and they try to establish themselves a little place where they can feel.
That's actually, I mean, I'm sure it's other parts of the world, but I spoke to a few brothers actually from France, and they were very critical of the masajid in the UK. They were like your cultural temples. He used that kind of word.
Yes.
And he goes, in France, we don't have that. We don't have this, Moroccans got together
That's
and built a masjid. It's like the Muslims got together and built a masjid. And we've got West Africans and North Africans or whatever together. And the imam the roots might be from somewhere like, Ghana or, somewhere.
Yeah.
And the masjid committee might be from Moroccan roots and Algerian.
So there's a question as to why that's the case.
So yeah, that is.
It might be something to do with politics in France being a little bit different than the UK.
I think there's a bigger population. Maybe they've had more
No,
time.
but they
than
also,
us
the
there.
historical colonial experiment was different.
Yeah.
Because the French always imposed a particular idea of what colonialism is.
There's not, like in the UK, there's a lot more emphasis on freedom.
Yes.
Yes.
And with the French, there's a lot more emphasis on, and they like on making this group, and that's why, for example, like the niqab gets banned there.
Yeah.
They can be a lot more strict with it. So
Yeah.
that might play into it, and that might have affected the Muslim community.
They might
there to
have
a
banded
degree.
together stronger
Yeah.
because of the equal pressures they were under.
Yes.
The lack of, we've got freedom. Look, we can just buy that building and say, right, time for a masjid, guys.
And 'cause
And it might take a few letters and meetings, but the council will say, yeah, okay, you know what, give it them. It's not a problem.
So
and all of a sudden you got a masjid which has its issues both from the Muslim community and the
so
non-Muslim community.
Just to sort of, because we were making a point about how, and I was linking that to how things stand out. So, but because of that, the architecture, when the community is getting together and like, what should we make the mosque look like?
Yeah, okay.
They're appealing to their own aesthetic inclination.
Yeah.
Like, we want it to look like this.
What we're accustomed to.
Yeah, because we want to feel, like, we want to bring a part of our home here, and this is where we live now. And there's nothing wrong with that in an objective sense. It's not a bad thing. It's just the way, and the British do that when they go elsewhere. And it happens with all communities. It's only the Muslims that generally it becomes controversial. But you go to Chinatown. Yeah. Chinatown doesn't look like the rest of Manchester. It looks like where?
China.
Like China.
I've
You've
been
got
there.
very Chinese architecture.
Yeah.
Little India. Like
Looks like India.
It looks like India. Like they import parts of their culture into that little area and make it look like home. That's very normal. There's not a problem with that. The issue is for the indigenous British person that's from here, and especially if they're from here for quite a while and then they pass these stories on to others, it becomes something scary for them because it's like things are changing. And for them, it's not something that can blend because the architecture is very, very different. What they're used to is like cobbled stone, British churches look a certain way. The noises that come out of these places are certain kinds of noises. You have a bell, you don't have the adhan, you have chanting You don't have dhikr in the same, like they sound a little bit different. Shaykh, what's his name? Abdul Hakim.
Yes, Murad. Yeah.
So he's got a book called
Essays in
Traveling
Europe.
Home.
Okay, traveling home. Yeah.
Essays about
Yeah.
and he sort of touches on it. And a big part of his project is sort of using what the English consider quote unquote normal. I'm using that word loosely, but normal in the sense that when they listen to chanting, they're used to a particular kind of chanting, and he's made Islamic versions of this.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes a point about like if we're building masjids, you want to try, if you want the indigenous community to, and this is a point of da'wah, if you want them to come here and if you want them to feel welcome, a big part of that is trying to understand how aesthetics plays a role.
Yeah, it
So,
reminds
let
me. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me share something with you. Now, this is part of our spiritual tradition. You know, that is a tradition of da'wah within our religious tradition. And what we find is that the Naqshbandis are the ones that took the mantle and they came towards the European world. And those that have turned up in, for example, Chechnya, or they turned up in some other, the Caucasus or whatever they were, do you understand? And what we found is that they had taken up the cultural norms of them communities. So their mosques didn't look too alien, or their clothing wasn't too other. Do you understand? But they did the rest of the things. So they would do wudu, they would pray salah, they will do all of that. But they ingrained themselves within that particular culture. Because Islamically, the Prophet, peace be upon him, came to the Arab community.
Yeah.
He was part of the Arab culture. He was part, and today we incorporate whatever we say, that's sunnah. But that's exactly what sunnah is. It's a practice.
Yeah.
And within our tradition, from a theological position, anything that does not violate or haram the Quranic tradition or the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, or which harms or hurts the concept of the five, we preserve things.
Yeah.
If it doesn't violate any of them, why is it a problem? It's never a problem.
Yeah, it's an urfi thing.
It's
the way of the people.
Custom.
Way of the people. And this is really powerful. And I think the moment we say, no, this is what a person should be like,
Yes.
regardless of being Christian or Hindu or Sikh or Jew or whatever they are.
And this is a huge obstacle to da'wah.
This is a huge lesson I want to share with our viewers, because you made a huge point there. It says in the Quran, every prophet was sent to their people with their tongue. You speak to people in the language, in the style, in the words they're accustomed to. Allah didn't send, random foreign people to, other people. They were very much part of their society. And what I was about to say earlier, what you said there, when the Muslims went and traveled across the world, they, whatever you want to call it, integrated and fitted in. But there's an example in the UK. You've been there, I've been there. Liverpool, the Abdullah Quilliam Masjid, and he set up a society, a community with him in Liverpool, and he, was a British Muslim, literally born and bred here and lived here. He was a solicitor, he was a poet, and if you look at his poems, and if you look at how you recite them, he even made the national anthem, the UK national anthem, into a Muslim chant. So you could sing the national anthem of the UK, but it wasn't about them, it was about the Muslims, right? But it would sound, it sounded like the national anthem, but it was actually a Muslim chant, praising God and praying for the brothers. So that is the way forward for our society. For brothers and sisters listening, we've got to be wiser to the society we live in and help them see Islam through, whatever lens it's needed at the time and place.
And I bring this in because Shaykh, we have, for example, in Hind in India, right? When Islam went there.
And the funny thing is, that's not a birthplace of Islam and normal. It was taken there, just as it's come here. Same thing.
Yeah.
With the same experience we've had, people in UK are having, but we just had it a few hundred years earlier.
So, and I think trying to raise an awareness of this, and because of the sort of big issues with things like racism, when we have a revert or someone that becomes a Muslim enter the community, there seems to be within the Muslim community an obsession with sort of turning them into one of us,
culturizing them.
You've got to stop wearing these kind of clothes. You can't look like the kuffar. And what's your name? What do you mean it's Sean? We've got to Muslimify it. We need to give you a different name. And there's a massive effort to sort of change the person and mold them as much as possible, so that they look identical. And you'll even see with a lot of reverts, the way they talk even ends up emulating.
Akhi, brother.
Yeah. And and in some way a subtle, like when we say in England, the English call it the Quran, the Muslims,
Yeah, the Muslims.
and then
the stiff upper lip.
yeah. Or they'll say Allah's name like Allah.
Allah.
Yeah.
And or like so, and then obviously when you're learning tajweed and things like that, like I say Quran, I say Allah, I say, like
You get used to it, right?
yeah. And so there's like sort of things that happen anyway. But then there can be like an extreme form of that.
By the
where
way,
the
Shaykh
person-
Imran's got a bit of Bolton twang in there. I don't know if you picked it up yet.
mashallah. And my daughter's becoming very Bolton now as well.
Mashallah.
The Bolton Caliphate.
Bolton massive.
Yeah.
Bolton Caliphate.
I'm not inclined towards that way.
But but the issue is that because of the anxieties around racism and things like that, I think that sort of motivates people to sort of make them the same. But the problem with that is that it offers an obstacle to dawah, because although some people might not necessarily find that or have a problem with that, like I've always been a bit of a social chameleon. Like I can blend with many different
Yeah,
groups.
mashallah.
And that's a beautiful thing about you, because what you did, if we're talking about expats, when we talk about, leaving your own community, when you grew up, right, that's exactly what you did.
Yeah. But I think that's because of my dad.
Nah.
Because my dad was a bit of a social chameleon. He could blend. He was a Scotsman and he used to hitchhike everywhere. He used to take me hitchhiking with him. And he had friends from many different backgrounds. So I think maybe a part of that has made it easier for me, or made it me being okay being uncomfortable, so to speak. Like I am permanently anxious. Like I'm never not, like right now I have bad anxiety. I always do. And I still, for some reason, seem to be able to function despite the anxiety. Not many, and I think that's atypical. It's not standard for many people to be able to function in a state of anxiety. And that needs to be taken into consideration when it comes to dawah, because if we do this, where we just sort of try to integrate them completely into the Arab community or the Pakistani community or whatever community it is, there's a number of people that might be able to do that, but again, they're not going to be the typical.
Yeah, or the majority.
Yeah. So there has to be an effort, like Abdul Hakim is trying at the moment, to sort of understand that birds of a feather flock together. And if you do want dawah to be successful, you have to make spaces for the indigenous people where they can feel normal, quote
Yes,
unquote.
of course.
Yeah.
And they
Comfortable.
Don't, yes.
Yeah,
And like and that's difficult because there's a huge issue with like, and because you've got the typical person, or we'll say the average person in the British community, you also have that within the Pakistani community. You've got a spectrum of intelligence, we'll say, and there's some people, mashallah, are very, we'll say, geniuses. You've got your doctors, you've got your lawyers, you've got your businessmen, etc. But like that's not everyone. And it's the same for every community. You have a group of people that are, mashallah, very intelligent, and then you've got a group of people that are, we'll say, normal. They're not geniuses, but they're not like struggling intellectually, we'll say. And then you have people that are maybe find it a lot more difficult engaging in abstract thought and things like that. And every community has like that. And the issue is that the majority of people tend to be in the middle.
Yes.
You've got the bell curve thing in terms of
of course we do,
intelligence. And the majority of the people are the ones we're constantly interacting with, and they'll say things not because they're trying to make things difficult, but just out of ignorance or naivety. Like when it was funny actually. Was it Dawood?
Yeah, Dawood.
Yeah. So when I first became Muslim,
Brother Dawood.
there was Brother Dawood. Mashallah, may Allah bless him, helped me a lot, and he was a revert, and me and a bunch of other reverts and Waqas would come with us. We would sort of meet together, and he would do these little sort of gatherings.
Yeah.
And there was a sister who'd reverted who was talking about, I don't know if it was her husband at the time or an ex-husband, and she missed English food, so she went and she bought some Quorn sausages or something. He went mental. He was like, no, sausages are haram. You can't have sausages. And like trying to have that conversation. No, it's not. Sausages are not haram. Like you can get halal sausages, but it's the naivety of this individual. He couldn't like understand that you could have a halal sausage.
Yeah.
Or that.
It's just the meat that. It's got
Yeah,
the meat
yeah,
that-
yeah. Like,
the-
no,
the
you're not
shape-
allowed full English anymore. That's haram. You have to have dal and this and that. And like,
Me and Sheikh Imran, we have full English all the time
all the
together.
time. You're not allowed Warburtons. You've got to have a naan bread.
Sayyidi,
That's-
yeah.
yeah.
And like,
So Sayyidi, you took a journey, right, which I thought was amazingly fascinating. You went abroad. You took a journey and you were looking for yourself. You're trying to discover things about yourself.
Sheikh Sabi was so wanting to discover about himself. He walked to Scotland.
He did, but I
That was
believe
a
that
different time.
that was a different time. That was a different time.
and I'll be honest, that wasn't necessarily because. How did you word it then? What was you saying? How did you describe my motivation?
That you're looking for something.
You're looking, you're searching.
I'll be honest. I was running away.
No, that's another way of looking
There
at
you
things.
go.
So you're running away from something,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
running towards
Exploring the
something
world.
else, but you
Finding-
didn't know what it was.
Searching for
per se.
meaning.
so. I think a big part of it was I was stuck in a sort of monotonous cycle,
Yeah.
and I've ever since I was a kid, I always
Was
had
this
an
around your
adventurous
early,
spirit.
late teens, early 20s? When was this?
It was like my late teens. I'd just
Yeah,
moved
yeah.
out for the first time. I moved to Moston.
Boston. That's around the corner.
Yeah. It's got a reputation. But and it was the first time I'd ever sort of moved out on my own, I think, if I remember correctly.
Mashallah.
And I was sort of like living there, and ever since I was a kid, I've always had this sort of desire to my favorite books were it might have been the Magic School Bus one.
Oh,
And I loved looking at like Adventures into the Jungle, and then it would be like, this is the bag, and these are all the things I have. And like in my head, I always wanted my own backpack and my own like equipment, like my cooker, my this and my that. And I looked at it like a shopping list, like I want this.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
when I grew up, that never really left. I always wanted to like go on an adventure. I always wanted to like do something amazing and like explore.
You're inspiring me right now.
But again, it's like, that might be I don't know what that is exactly. Part of it may have been from my dad. There's the whole Viking thing. They were very obsessed with
the nomadic
traveling.
sort of,
Yeah.
like-
conquering more like it.
yeah.
That as well.
And you have to
And-
live rough and move around a lot. Yeah.
And then like I was working in call centers a lot, and it was just the same thing.
Monotonous, same
Yeah,
thing.
and then it just got
So
to a
it's
point
kind of
where
like want to get out and do.
I couldn't
something.
do it anymore. It
Yeah.
was depressing me.
I really commend you for that decision. You just packed your bag and
Yeah,
just go off to somewhere in the middle of
so
nowhere.
I sold everything as well.
Yeah, he sold everything.
Yeah, so I didn't have anything other than what
Wow.
I took with me.
This
which
is like the olden days, with the saints. This is actually an Islamic thing. They would just get rid of everything they had, and they just pick a direction. They just walk off, and they would just like wherever the food comes from,
Well,
eat. Will be.
Well, I wasn't even a Muslim at the time, but that's exactly what I
This
did.
is the
I
principle,
bought
or
a ticket,
yeah.
a one-way ticket to South Korea,
South Korea. Wow.
and I didn't plan anything.
Was it like really communist and tough at that time?
No, it was 2012.
Okay, yeah, it was not too
And it was
long.
South Korea.
Okay, South Korea.
South Korea is the
better than-
capitalist
okay, right.
version.
Yeah, yeah.
The capital.
The North Korea is very communist. But yeah, just with me, and it was funny because I was at some stupid festival, and I bumped into a guy, and we were just vibing, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And we were talking, and I was like, "Yeah, man, I wanna travel the world," and he was like, "Yeah, I wanna travel the world," and we were like, "Why don't we travel the world together?" and that was literally the first time I'd met him.
Yeah.
We had a mutual friend, but like he was
And this
from
is in South Korea.
no, this was in England.
England, okay, right. I was
yeah.
like-
And this was while I was working at
Yeah.
a call center
Okay, right. So this is part
Tesco
of the.
Mobile
Okay.
in Radcliffe, Bury.
Good old days.
Yeah. And so me and him just in that moment while we were sort of chilling together decided we were just gonna go travel,
Yeah.
and we did.
Wow.
We set a target. I rang him and I said, I was serious, by the way. He said, yeah, me too. I said, okay, what we'll do is we'll say, I've got enough money to buy a ticket now to South Korea.
Yeah.
So me and you, we buy a ticket for 8
cool.
months' time, and we have to go. And in that time, we've
Save
got to
up
save up as much as we can, and we've got no choice.
Wow.
And so he was like, yeah, I'm up for that. And so he's a posh lad from Surrey.
Okay.
He went to like
Down
a
south,
nice
okay.
private school. And I'm not a posh lad from Surrey. And so, yeah, that's what we did. So I was saving up. I was working like 12-hour shifts, every overtime I could ever work. And I saved up as much as I possibly could. And then I sold everything that I had to get as much money as I could.
Yeah, and then
And then me and him got on a flight to
South Korea.
South Korea.
Wow.
And then we decided where we were going to stay when we got there. We didn't have a hotel booked
Booking or
anyway.
anything like
No.
that.
So we
Wow.
landed and we went to look for somewhere that had Wi-Fi and got a strawberry milkshake.
Yeah.
Right.
That's Korean for strawberry.
It's not bad.
Strawberry.
Yeah.
It's, don't know if you could figure that out without me telling you. But,
That was very hard. Yeah.
but and then we found a little hostel and we went to the hostel and then we bumped into someone and it was just a very like accidental experience.
Yeah.
We just let one moment lead to the next.
Wow.
Before I knew it, I was
How long were you in South Korea then? What happened?
2-3 months.
2-3
think.
months, just figuring it out.
Yeah, just
day by
winging it.
day.
Yeah, and then you bump into someone, see what they were
Yeah.
doing, decide if you wanted to tag along with them or not.
Wow.
You get bored of someone, you'd stop tagging along. go.
Where's next then after South Korea?
No, before he goes there, you know, you have an experience of a Buddhist
In South
monastery.
Korea? Here?
In
Which I
South
thought-
Korea.
Yeah,
In South
which I
Korea.
thought was really
Well,
interesting.
it was funny because before I went, I was like, yeah, what I would love to do is I want to go live with the monks. And in my head, it was like...
Shaolin monks, yeah. The martial arts.
But it was funny because I loved, Cal Pilkington.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I used to kill off Cal
Yeah.
Pilkington. And just the idea of like... And then a less stupid way than he did it, but like the idea of just finding this secret little temple and like living with monks and learning kung fu.
Yeah.
Now I never learned kung fu, but we basically bumped into someone who was going to a temple, and we asked could we tag along.
So you did actually go.
Yeah, and it was a weekend temple stay. If you Google it, Gwynza Temple, like you can pay for like a weekend,
And you
there.
can stay there for a weekend,
Yeah.
experience what it's
and they'll
like.
give you a temple experience. But
Right.
it is a proper Buddhist
Buddhist
temple.
temple experience.
And
Wow.
they live in a mountain valley, and it's like if you can walk in it in Google Maps. So if you go on Google Maps, you can have a look at Gwynza
And you can
Temple.
see the pictures and,
and you
stuff.
and you can see where I stayed. And so we went in
Wow.
there, and there's a special quarters for tourists, and we stayed there, and they showed us, and they were like we were meditating with them and ate with them, and then it was a very beautiful temple. They've got a lot of mad stuff, a lot of very shirky things, which I'll go into. But it was very, very interesting. And then everyone else was leaving, and I was like, I don't want to go anywhere. So I ran to one of the monks that spoke English, because there wasn't many. There was like one or two. And I said, can I stay? And they said, yeah, but you can't stay in the touristy bit. You've got to live
With us.
over here. And there's a public area, because the Buddhists in Korea, if you want to go to the temple, you can just go and you live in this public room. It's like a big hall. And yeah.
One thing you mentioned, I was listening to Brother Ben, I think it was in Aira, with the podcast that you did, and which I thought was really interesting, that the Koreans themselves, because they have really fast lives and very hectic lives, the monastery became a place of sanctuary for them.
Yeah, they would go
So
there, like
they-
they would take a break, and like many people would just go, and that's how the monks end up there. Is they go and then they just decide they don't want to leave,
Wow.
and they have that option, and you could just, if you want to, this temple could house like 10,000 monks. Wow, it was very, very big, and they fed everyone, and they were self-sustaining, which is I can send you some of the pictures, but like they had their own farms.
Oh, you mean self-sustaining as in they just grew everything on site?
Yeah.
And,
So they grew their
wow.
own rice, they grew their own chilies, they grew they made their own kimchi. They had these huge, and again, if you go on to the Google Maps and you go through the temple, you'll see these huge like urns, like these big vases with lids on, and that's the kimchi, where they're fermenting it and that. And so they made their own.
That's that drink people have now for like health benefits.
Yeah. Kimchi's it's like a pickle. It's like a pickled cabbage.
Okay.
Fermented cabbage. So it's like spicy coleslaw.
Yes.
Not spicy coleslaw. Sauerkraut.
Did you have it at your house once? Yeah.
So in Poland we have sauerkraut, and it's a German thing as well.
Yes.
It's like a pickled cabbage.
Yeah.
And it's like a spicy version of that.
So what I felt, which was really amazing about you, is that when you went there, of course, you said, of course, I was running away from something, you understand? But you turned up into this place. You had all of these fantasies of, I want to become Shaolin, whatever, monk or whatever it was, whatever it may be.
Well, they didn't do kung fu here, so
of course they didn't.
it was just
Of course
like,
they
this
didn't.
is cool. And if they're
cool.
gonna have me, and I didn't have to pay anything, they gave me, I ate 3 meals a day with them. We lived in this big hall, and we just slept on a floor, but the floor was like a heated floor, and it was It was a very nice building, and the food was good. And then I had to work for them, so I had to like work on their farm. So I had to go and plant the rice. And it was a long day, so it was from 6 till 7, 8. So you're working 12, 14 hours a day.
Wow.
And then one of the funny things was I was under the impression we'd get a full night's sleep,
They wake you up in the middle of the night.
No,
you're not allowed to sleep at all. Like they
Oh.
beat you if you fall asleep. And so
Wow, this
in the
proper
room,
spiritual then, isn't it?
so in the room,
Training.
everyone, or the public stay there. So the majority of the people in this room, they're not working on the farm.
Right.
They're just like there to have a temple experience and like to get away and to try to like.
So they're just watching on kind of thing.
So they would literally just meditate all day in this
Yeah.
place, and then they would meditate at night, or they would maybe sleep during the day.
Well, you
Um,
had to stay up and
but I-
meditate all
Yeah,
night.
so, well, only for the first night,
Okay.
and then I had to complain. I was like, "You're gonna kill me.
Yeah.
I can't do this." But
So,
we would work
Did you get
like
beats on the first night then?
yeah. So we'd worked all day on the farm with them, and then we went back and we tried. They were like, "You've got to meditate." So we meditated for like. We got back at like 8. We'd been working from 6 in the morning. 8 p.m. We ate some food, and then I was like, "All right, I'm dead. I'm going to sleep." And no, like bang, they have this stick
Oh yes.
that's got.
This brings flashbacks.
Yeah.
This we can relate to this.
Yeah. I can imagine. The Tajweed classes.
Yeah,
and that.
that's it.
And they broke the stick. It was like a cane in
Yeah.
half, and then they put something in the middle and put tape around it, so that when it hit you, it made a big crash, like
Yeah,
like
yeah.
and
Yeah,
the stick would
that
clap, clap.
effect. Yeah.
And so it'd make a loud noise and it'd shock you. And so me and my mate are trying to fall asleep on the floor, just
And you
like
get
starfish. And you just get whacked on the forehead, and you're like, "What's going on?" And then they're like, "Meditate," because no one speaks English; they're all Korean. And so like we're meditating, and it's like 2 hours. It's like it's 12 o'clock now. I'm gonna go. I need sleep. And you're trying to sleep, and he'd whack you again. It's like no, like for them, the night is a very important time, coincidentally,
Yeah.
because even in our tradition it is.
Some of the night.
And typically what they would do is they would meditate all night and then sleep for a couple of hours. And the monks, for some reason, they would not really sleep. And then they were expecting us to do this as well. And I was like, I can't. Give me, please, for the love of God, just give me 5 hours. I'll meditate until 12, and then I'll go to sleep, and I'll wake up at 5, and then I'll go to work. But I need at least 5. Just give me some.
Within the spiritual tradition, especially with tariqat and etc., there's a whole tradition that exists. We also know people who go to these boot camps, for example. You know, if there are certain habits that individuals have, they have to go through a very rigorous process of removing them particular habits so they can be rebuilt as individuals. So this is the same journey that's happening within the spiritual context. What I thought was really interesting about yourself is that you, of course, the night, and they were chanting. And in your ears, they were unsynced. They were not syncing. Right,
It wasn't just my ears.
yeah.
It was just objectively the case. They were not singing.
They were,
It was like a playground.
It was, but what I
very
thought,
loud,
but what I thought was really interesting about
very
you
chaotic.
is that after a while you got connected to a particular monk, and his chanting, even though you didn't understand what he was saying, you started to engage with that particular.
So what it was is, to begin with, he annoyed me because he was very loud, and we tried avoiding him to begin with. And when I spoke to them, I was like, "Please," I begged, "I need sleep." And so they said to the guy that went around hitting everyone, they said, "Only hit them until 12, and then leave them alone." And so he would only hit us until 12, and then after midnight he would leave us alone. And like it got to a point where we would just get so tired, we would just pass out. But sometimes it would be a bit difficult because there was so much noise.
Awesome though.
And they're very, very loud. And what they would say is that they said the name of what essentially would be like a saint for them. It was a very holy person.
Yeah.
And the person was called Guanzeumbozai.
Yeah, the founder of the.
Yeah. And so they would just repeat this person's name over and over and over again. And some people would be like screaming it with no like harmony and just Guanzeumbozai, Guanzeumbozai, and literally just at the top of the voice would just scream it. And then next man over there would be like Guanzeumbozai.
Yeah, very calm
But like everyone had their own thing.
Yeah.
And it, honest to God, it was just like chaos in a playground. It was just loads of noise because no one cares about what everyone else is doing. It's just, I'm going to do what I like. And they would just do it over and over and over and over again for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours every night until they went into the zone.
When you said when you said they went into the zone, you know, when I heard you say this, it reminded me of the essence of what the spiritual world is. All of us are at a different level. Spiritually, some are strong, some aren't. And the more spiritually stronger you become, the more calmer you become, the more focused you become. the more inclined you become,
The more you can
more
shift out
central,
the world.
the more central
Yeah.
that you become. And like you said, the person that was the most loudest, once they all got into that state, what happened then?
So they would just sort of zone out, and I had experiences like that eventually, because like they had us doing it quite a lot, and a part of it is just like, and I think when we live in a very busy world, we're often stuck in our head, and we're often thinking constantly and worrying constantly and anxious and worrying about what I've not done this, I've not done that, or this person said this person said that, this person annoyed me, this, and we get very much stuck in our heads. I don't think this is a new phenomenon. I think this is a human problem throughout the centuries, and the whole function of this, and unfortunately they tie it to very shirky practices, because they're focusing not on Allah, the creator, and this is a problem I ended up having with them. They're focusing on created things, but the thing that they're focusing on it ceases to be the point. Like they're just trying to zone out. They're trying to stop worrying about things, and get into a place of quietness, quote unquote. And so they would just repeat this over and over and over and over again until they did that.
Within the chant, that is, of course, there's a state of nirvana, right? Nirvana is a state of nothingness, right?
Yeah.
And the concept of Brahma being the ultimate spiritual being, whoever that may be.
Yeah.
And then there is a connection through that process. And the nothingness lies is that I am nothing within that. So for me, when especially at this moment, in this particular country, what they find is the fastest religion growing within prisons is Buddhism, right? And there's a reason. Because in the silence of that cell, there's too much sound inside the heart and the mind, is the point that you're making.
Yeah. The quieter is out there, the louder it is.
The louder it
here.
becomes here. But then they have to balance that out somehow.
Yeah.
And consider they find it in these chants, these meditations, these type of practices, right? So initially it is the idea that I'm concentrating on something which is random, per se. But then slowly it starts to click. Like it did with you. You said that you had a particular experience yourself.
Yeah. Well, it happened a few times. It wasn't anything like spooky or like super amazing, but like you would get into this weird, very, very, and considering I'm an incredibly anxious person, you would just get into this very calm state, which I'm not very used to.
And you had turned away from Catholicism. You had become much more atheistic in your way of thinking.
Yeah.
When you had taken
when I was a teenager, by the time I was traveling, I was opening up a lot more to agnosticism, because by this point I'd already spent, because I had started traveling in 2012. I think I was about 21 then. I'd been meeting up with Muslims and working with Muslims and had a lot of Muslim friends from about the age of 17. And I had a lot of conversations about Islam. I'd gone into, there was a particular YouTube series that was big at the time, The Arrivals.
Yes, I
Yeah, I
remember
watched
that.
that.
I
I actually watched that whilst I was in Syria.
Yeah. But it was a huge hit at the time, and it was very linked into conspiracy
Rivals,
theories.
yeah.
And I'd already gotten into all the Illuminati
check
stuff.
floor, yeah.
Yeah. So I was very much on my conspiracy theory phase of life, and so I was dead into like the Illuminati and all of this. And then I was introduced to the Arrivals, and there was I actually ended up meeting one of the guys that was involved in that.
In the
And
Arrival series.
So, yeah, he's in the production of it. He's a good friend of mine,
Right, okay.
and he's a Sunni. He didn't realize that the people that were producing
It was
it
Shia,
were Shia.
Background, yeah.
And towards the end of the series, it becomes very clear.
Yeah. At the end, you figure it out.
Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, so, and I'd got very much like into that, and I'd become more agnostic in my interactions with these people and in looking into these things already. So I was quite open to like leaving atheism behind.
And what was beautiful is that when you started to read the Quran, and you said that it was like the Quran was shouting at me.
Yeah, this was before I went traveling, because I'd read it once.
I want to say this because the reason I wanted to do that was because when you went abroad and you came across this chaos in the way the Buddhists were chanting.
Yeah.
But then over time, your body started to engage with that process and you had your own spiritual experiences.
Yeah.
Before that, where the Quran was, when you read the Quran, it's like you're screaming at me.
Yeah, because at the time when I was reading it, I I considered myself an atheist. So when I was reading it the first time, I would say I don't think God exists. That the statement, the proposition, does God exist, was false, and I was comfortable saying that.
Until you open the Quran.
And well, the first time I read it, even when I was reading the Quran, I still held that position. And the reason I felt like it was shouting at me, because the verses that felt like they were speaking to me were the ones talking about the disbelievers.
Directly.
Yeah.
Let me share with you. That was, when you said that shook me. Now, I myself, I've been honored to study, learn, seek, for alhamdulillah, for many years. But when you said that, it made me realize I've not been shaken like that. Because I've never looked at the Quran in that particular context. And when you said that, I go,
yeah, because I guess
he's had that experience of the non-Arabs, the non-Muslims, the mushriks of Mecca.
Yeah.
When the verses were coming down, and Rasulullah was reading to them, they were like,
yeah, they'd have heard, but as well, even the Arabs at the time, because they did believe in Allah. A big part of the problem with the Arabs was that they
Shirk,
they associated partners with him, and they, although there was other beliefs that you could say had an atheistic underpinning, like they found it quite silly to think that we could be resurrected, and they would mock it. Which I think is even mentioned in the Quran.
Yeah, of course it is, yeah.
Many times. It's a big
times,
theme.
Yeah.
it was not part of their beliefs, set of beliefs.
No resurrection.
Yeah. So I think that element of me, that's definitely where I shared, where I was like, oh no, this idea that we
I'm going to come back one day.
that's
There's
silly.
life after death.
But as well, there's probably, and maybe there was some of the Arabs that were atheistic or would reject the idea of God completely. Allahu alam. But like, I'm not too sure like how new this phenomenon is, because historically atheists, although there's always been there's atheists in ancient Greece,
Of course there are.
but they were not common. The vast majority of people always believed in something, and
So when the Quran did that to you,
yeah,
what made you feel? This is not for me?
it was just it was a bit annoying, if I was
like
honest. I felt like I was being attacked, and a part of me, I guess, because I've always been very argumentative, made me want to argue with it, and I could be quite stubborn. So I would often meet up with my friends, some of them being here, and we would argue or debate, or not necessarily in like a negative sense. Like we could have good discussions, and we always used to go to Wimmy Road and get some food, and then just have it out for like the whole night, essentially. And then sometimes it wasn't always like me versus you. There was a lot of talking about things that we did agree on, like when we were talking about the arrivals and we were talking about the Illuminati, and I was talking about the media and whether or not you can trust them and how they play their role in society and shaping how people think about groups of people. Yes. So there was a lot of really cool conversations that we would have about all of these things. And then sprinkled out here and there was a bit of debate. But for me, when I was reading it the first time, it did feel like I was getting attacked. So I would be a little bit annoyed by that. And then I would pick that up in a conversation with my friends and say, like, for example, when it's talking here, like, why does it talk about the disbeliever in this way? Why is it referring? Because it's not, for me, it wasn't, when I was reading it, it's not just talking about me. It's also talking about people I love. It's talking about my family. It's talking about the people I grew up with, my community, the majority of the people that I have in my life. It's talking about my dad. It's talking about my mum. So, like, and obviously there's this huge tension.
So when
it's quite normal, I think, to come from that.
When you were reading that and you were thinking about all these people, the Sahaba did the same.
Yes.
Because some of them converted to Islam.
Yeah.
They had mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and uncles and aunties who were exactly that the Quran was talking about.
Yes.
At that time. And that's the power of the convert, which we as individuals who have so-called, had the religion and faith or whatever, I always say this, I always give this example that you stand in the light, you get blinded by the light. Sometimes you have to stand away to be guided by the light.
Yeah.
Right? And with converts, that's why converts revive our iman. They revive our love. they revive our connection with God Almighty, because they've seen the other side and suddenly they see the light. Tell me about this, Yusuf. Bleach blonde hair, went to a Muslim country, started a bar on a Muslim island. How dare you, my brother? What's going on there?
So Malaysia. That was an accident.
He says accident.
Accident.
Yeah.
Bleach blonde hair, accident.
Yeah, so I'd been to this. So at first I was in South Korea. When we finished South Korea, we went to Taiwan. When we finished Taiwan, we meant to go to
Taiwan?
Vietnam.
Interesting.
I was supposed to go Vietnam.
Yeah.
And we bought a ticket to Vietnam. And for some stupid reason, you had to fly over Vietnam, land in Malaysia, and then get another plane to go back to Vietnam. I don't know why.
Flights.
Yeah. And
So you go to Malaysia.
got to Malaysia, went to get on the plane to go to Vietnam, and they were like, "You messed up your visa, you can't go." And I was like, "What do you mean?" So we got stuck in Malaysia, and then at that point, I was like, "Oh, we've got a free 3-month visa here."
Because the return flight's in 3 months.
No, we didn't have we never bought return flights.
He
We just bought
lock,
one
stock,
way.
barrel. He sold everything, gave everything.
I just whenever I went somewhere, I
you
just buy
landed
one
in
way
Malaysia
ticket.
and you thought, let's just stay
Yeah,
here.
I didn't. All I knew was the next step.
Yeah.
The next step was Vietnam.
Yeah.
So we bought a ticket to Vietnam. That was it. We didn't. We were just going to figure things out when we
Yeah.
got there, because it's not that difficult to do. It seems very scary, but
Yeah.
it's been
I think
made
people
very
out
easy.
there are not scared. They're like, oh my God, we're going to die. Right?
You know, Sheikh,
It's not like
isn't that tawakkul?
There, of course. Yeah. That's the reality
Yeah.
of the world. Get out there.
just submit to the
Yeah.
like a stick in the water. You just go with the flow.
Yeah, with
and
the flow.
and it's always a lot worse when you worry in your head than it is in reality.
In
and,
reality, yeah.
and I'd get there and you're like, you ask hotel there. Okay, buzzing. Right. And you go into the hotel and you're fine. Like
Yeah.
food. Yeah, we eat too. Like here's
Yeah.
food. Oh, right, buzzing. So it was just a case of like, we just booked the ticket. We were supposed to go there. We didn't get there, but it was okay because we had a 3-month
Entry to Malaysia.
to Malaysia.
as a
And you
British.
get that when you arrive anyway.
Yeah.
So we just got in a taxi and said, take us to Kuala Lumpur. And so he just took us there. And then we found the Wi-Fi, and you've got apps, and we go on to booking.com or whatever other app we were using. And you just find order according to whatever's the cheapest, right? That's the cheapest one, £5 a day. We're going to go there. And then you go and you share a room with 50 people in a bunk bed. And you pay a £5 and you're chilling. And then you meet people there and you're, where are you going? Oh, we're going to this place. And you join them and eat with them. And
So that was your Muslim stroke.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it was an act. It's a Muslim majority country, but it's not strictly Muslim.
That's what I said. That's
Yeah,
a
there's
Muslim stroke.
Yeah, so there's a
cultural
lot. There's a
experience.
very, very large Chinese
It is, yeah.
population who are majority Buddhist. There's a very large Indian community there that are Hindu. And so although it's a very Muslim country, they also have very Buddhist things. Like they've got one of the biggest Buddhist statues in Penang. In Kuala Lumpur, they had a huge Hindu statue in the Batu Caves, I think it was called.
Yeah.
And it's massive. And the caves are huge. And it's a very Hindu place. And so like we were just sort of floating around. Again, bumped into someone who was going somewhere, and we tagged along with him, and he went to this place called Tioman Island.
Yes.
And I went there, and we liked it. The guy we went there with left, and me and my mate were like, no, we're staying. And there was a Swedish woman that ran a bar, and she had a load of run-down chalets behind the bar that the jungle had just taken over, and they were horrible. They were that bad you couldn't rent them. Like they were really, really bad. And we said, well, we'll live there, and we'll help you with the bar if you just let us stay there.
Yeah.
So me and him ended up like running this bar for her, and we got like an old oil barrel that was cut in half and turned it into like a barbecue. We used to go get fish from the fishermen, and then we used to have barbecues and try and make extra money.
You know, when you saying this, it reminds me of Leonardo DiCaprio's movie The Beach, right? Because that was exactly it. That's exactly what was happening. And
we found paradise.
You found paradise ultimately. That's what it was, and it was fascinating. I was like, "What minute has that movie been made on his life? What's going on?" You know what I mean?
So there's probably a lot of overlap, but I think there's many people that do that where they go, because there's literally thousands of thousands, if not millions, of people that just travel at the moment. It's a huge industry, and but this island I was on was a very dead island. There wasn't many people. We were there for a couple of weeks. We left. went on to do other things, ended up in Thailand for a bit. And then I ended up, funnily enough, quote unquote, falling in love with a murtad from the Maldives. And long story short, she ended up breaking my heart. And I ended up coming back to Malaysia to find her because her mum was she worked in the what's it called? The embassy.
Embassy, okay. Yeah.
For the Maldives.
Maldives embassy in
Yeah,
Kuala Lumpur.
in Kuala Lumpur. And so she lived in Kuala Lumpur with her family. And
So you were going after love, yeah?
quote unquote, in hindsight, I don't think it was love.
Okay,
But
right.
It's lust.
yeah, essentially. But I was like trying to figure out why it wasn't going to work, and I was trying to get her back. Long story short, she didn't, and then I made a decision whether or not to go back home and just end it there,
Yeah.
or to just go back to this island that I went to.
Yeah.
And I got in touch with some friends that were still there, that were dive masters, and they said, well, there's a job going on at this bar, a different bar, not the same one that I went to the first time. So I got a job at the bar. The girl that was running it ended up quitting and leaving, and then I inherited the bar.
Wow.
And I just had to
As
pay,
a default.
Yeah, I just had to pay the guy who owned it rent. He was a dude who owned this hotel on, it was called ABC Beach. Again, you can, if you go on Google Maps, you can
ABC
go
Beach.
down this. ABC Beach on Tioman Island, and you can have a look. And
Might visit one day.
yeah, well, it was a very beautiful island. It's very like there's
How many islands are in Malaysia? There's like 50 islands.
that's a lot.
Yeah,
I can't
a
remember
lot.
how many, but this one was this was like off the beaten track, quote unquote.
Right.
Not many people went there, and my bar was busy if there was like 20 people at it. So it was very small.
Yeah.
So at night, you will be drinking, chilling, relaxing, doing your thing, and then in the morning, suddenly the azan goes.
Yeah, so as we're going to bed, or getting like we're about to go to bed, the sun would start to rise, and we're winding down for the night, getting ready to go to sleep, and then the adhan would play out loud because a lot of the people that lived on that island were Muslim, and then you would see them getting up for Fajr
Wow.
and going, and whenever that happened, everyone would just become quiet, like, and you would just listen to it. And if we were talking, everyone would just shut up and just listen, because it was very, mashallah, whoever the brother was had a very beautiful voice, and he did the adhan very well. So you wanted to listen to it, and it would make everyone quite emotional, and as well because everyone was very tired at that point as well. I guess there's a submissiveness to the
Very
exhaustion.
suggestive state.
Yeah, and so you would just sort of experience it and enjoy it, and you'd be put into a very emotional state. Like, it was very easy to get quite sad listening to it, and because a part of it is like you're sort of looking at like all these muppets you sat with, and all the things you're doing, and like the stupid crap you get up to. And
So with you, what's really happening, every so on, right? You are relaxing, you're chilling, you're doing your thing, you coming across different experiences, different travelers, different people. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? But every so on, you'd get a glimpse of some sort of essence of spirituality, right? May that be because of chanting of the Buddhists. May that be because you were traveling somewhere. Maybe there's something beautiful that you had seen. Suddenly you hear the azan, and you were always being thrown into a particular state,
yeah,
right? Which I thought was really amazing when I was looking into your life.
yeah. So that as well, I think, is a big part of it is thinking about death. So even like when you're with the Buddhists, you're thinking about death. You're thinking about how everything comes to an end. That's the main emphasis. It's like everything comes to an end. It's trying to get you out of the sort of rat race mentality where you're not focused solely on the dunya, and you're trying to, like, quote unquote, transcend above it and to look at it holistically, like in terms of everything. And then when you're on these beaches with these people running a bar, it's very easy to just get sucked into the dunya, into the dramas. This person's annoyed this person, or this person's interested in this person, and it's like there's all this sort of beach politics, we'll call it, between the different relationships and everyone on the beach. Newcomers, the long-term stays, the people that have been on this beach for a while, people that were born here, the Malaysians versus the non-Malaysians or the foreigner. And like, it's very easy to get like caught up in that. And then like at the end of the night, and then the adhan goes off, and it's like, obviously I'd already read the Quran from front to back at that point, and there's a huge part of my life that is very much painted by death. Like I lost my dad when I was 9. It was only a little bit before his mum died. A year after he died, his brother died, my uncle, who was like my favorite uncle, from a different thing. My dad died from heroin. My uncle died because of cider, alcohol poisoning. Not long after that, my granddad died. Not long after that, my grandma died. I've had friends die. My dad's best friend committed suicide. There was so much death around me. It became like a constant feature. You couldn't help but wonder when your turn was. And most of the death that was in my life wasn't from old people either. It was from people that just probably didn't think they were going to be dead the next day. And I think maybe as well, I had more of a tendency to start thinking about death because I always have. It's always been there. So when I would hear the adhan, I'm thinking now about reading the Quran and the Quran talking about Judgment Day and like life after death and whether or not there is life after death and if there's a God. And so these thoughts are like coming into my head. And I'm listening to these words that I don't understand, and I'm thinking about the words that I did, like the translation of the Quran.
And one more thing which you really said, which I thought was really powerful, is you said on the beach itself, we had people who were long-termers there, people who were new, people who were part of the Malaysian community, people who were, just come there or whatever it was. And then suddenly the azan goes and everybody's in that particular somber state. When I was listening to that initially, that reminded me of the Muslim Ummah. There are people who are in the faith, people who've come new, people who have a little bit of experience, people who have a little bit of understanding, people who have, whatever it is. And sometimes there's an arrogance in that. And that just because I was born as a Muslim, I'm better than you. And you came across that aspect in your travels, in your fellow travelers. You said that, you mentioned that in one of your podcasts, which I thought was very important. And you said that in having that experience, I started to realize, you know what? I've had enough of all this. I ran away from all that. And then you turned your face and you went back to Manchester.
Yeah, so there's a lot that went on between Malaysia, because I went from Malaysia, I ended up in Thailand, because the problem in Malaysia was the locals had their own bars, and my bar was in the way of the other bars, and my bar was a cool bar because I made it dead loud and fancy, and I did fire poi, and I used to so when people would walk down the beach, they would usually stop at mine and then wouldn't go past
You had
it.
more entertainment.
So the locals that lived a bit further got really annoyed with that because the business was going really bad for them, and so then they would come, and some of them had drug problems and things like that. So Paradise turned out not to be Paradise. It reared its ugly head, we'll say. And so then lots of issues started. So it got to a point where it's like, I can't stay here, I'm going to go. And I ended up going to another temple, but one in Thailand, a Buddhist temple there, the Tiger Temple. And I ended up working with tigers and lions and bears
Mention that,
and things like that. And I've got pictures, I'll show you. I don't know if I've already shown
No,
them.
I've not seen them.
And I was there for like 3 months, and I was like, oh wow, this is amazing, because like everyone reacts the same way. It's like you show them the pictures, oh wow. But it was quite controversial. But if you Google it again, it got shut down.
It got shut down.
And the tigers got confiscated from them. There was a huge controversy about illegal trades and stuff like that.
Wow.
And it was the same thing. Like when I first got there, I was very enamored by this magical place. But then in the long run, you start to see there's a lot of problems here.
Were you seeing like there was like corruption and like ingenuine kind of attitude?
Yeah, and just even the conditions that the tigers lived in weren't necessarily the best, but there was a big problem. It was like, there's a lot of tigers here. How much space can you give them? It costs a lot of money. But then as well, they were investing a lot of money in building these big temples and not much money in the sole source of a lot of their, well, saying that, Buddhism was quite big in Thailand, so there's a whole debate about where all of their money came from. They did make a lot of money from the tigers, but that wasn't it. They also made a lot of money from religious donations and things like that, because they had a huge
taking that,
but yeah, so there was that, and then I became very and it was very much like thinking I found paradise, finding out that it's not. And this is dunya, and it disguises itself as something beautiful, but there's always an ugly underbelly, and it just kept happening and happening and happening. And it was the same thing, like trying to sort of establish yourself in a place, and then sort of falling out of love with it, and then leaving. And eventually it just got too much. It was like, and I'd run out of money. So I ended up just flying home at that point with the intention of saving up to go travel again. But that never happened. And then I just ended up getting stuck here.
And being stuck in Manchester, you said once that when I came out to Manchester, I felt I have experienced the world, but everyone around me is still stuck in the same place. You know, I could relate. I don't know if Shaykh feels the same, but I was abroad. I went to study, learn. I went to Egypt and etc. for a number of years, and I had the same experience. I come back and I felt I've had all these experiences, good, bad, and ugly, whatever they were, right? But it felt like I've come back to people who've not had them experience. They couldn't understand me in many ways, which became a bit of a challenge.
Huge. I remember when I came back, exactly that. I felt so out of place. And like nobody understands me. I can't relate to people here. And it's not that you don't want to. It's not arrogance or anything in there. It's just like two worlds apart. It's like what is going on. And it takes a kind of almost like you're settling in back to your home, almost like it's a new world, a new place. I mean, I think you're a different person. That's the thing. People haven't maybe progressed much, or they have in their own lives in this world. And you've progressed totally differently in the world you've been in, which is really good because you've made new friends. You opened your mind up to a lot of different ideas. You experienced a lot of different culture and, you know, people. And it's really helped you move a lot broader and forward in your life. Whereas, you know, you can't get that. I mean, traveling in itself, you know, it exposes to a lot of different things, you know.
So keeping our experiences, and I could link with that to a certain extent. So when you came back, you had a similar experience, but then you went down a very different route. You went down route of this. Of course, this is the ultimate, you know, conclusion of a lot of work that you do, which is Islam and nihilism, my poison and my cure. And you can get this from Amazon. You can get this from other platforms as well.
You can get it for free.
You can get it for free.
You don't have to pay for it. Okay. We don't make any money from if you buy it from Amazon, unless you like physical books.
Yes.
In which case you can get it from Amazon. But if you just
you get free PDF.
You can get the PDF for free if you go to sapiensinstitute.org/books.
An individual who goes on this particular journey as a convert, not a convert, a person who's seeking for something, looking for something. Sometimes they might not be seeking it. They might not be looking for it, and it's again and again it's being thrown in their face, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, you need this. And in Sayyid Yusuf's case, this is what was going on. He was living his life, he's laughing, he's engaging, he's meeting people, do you understand? He's doing all of that. But at the same time, he's listening his chants, he's listening to his azan, he's listening to different experiences, connecting with death, connecting to his personal experiences, right? And there's always some truth that keeps us smacking him in his face.
Yeah, and on that point, I asked him, when did this happen? Right? Why? What's going on? Because you had his upbringing, whatever. Everybody's out there got their own unique journey, you know, mashallah. And he said, look, teens into his 20s, and that for me is like university age, college age, getting out of school, adulthood, you know, like maturity. And I can relate to that because in that time of my life, I actually decided to travel as well.
Yes, you did.
Believe it or not, right? That's the age. I didn't travel when I was young to the foreign lands or even in my 30s. It was literally around 18, 19, 20 that I was making these decisions as well. And I think that's a crucial part of life, that is where, you know, you have opportunity to do literally whatever you want. You could travel to the North Pole and back. You could do the, 10 marathons in 10 days. You could do anything, any challenge, because you're in the prime of your health and your, strength. But I think you're in the prime of your thinking as well. I know we mature. I know why do we do degrees at that 19, 18, 20, 21? Because your mind is very strong if it's been through the studies and that level, mashallah. And I think at that point you have these existential thoughts, crises call them, or where I'm going, what is life. And I think Brother Yusuf's story is the human story, because we all think, what am I doing here, right? Whether it's agnosticism, atheism, a religious idea, it's all about finding some meaning or escaping from, because it can get to that idea which we've talked about a little in some of our previous podcasts of like, covering over the reality, like not wanting to face reality. So you go into what? Drinking or enjoyment or friendships or projects or, like dunya, like you're so engrossed in a distraction, you forget or you kind of cloud over the real meaning your heart is searching for.
And that's the issue here. Man ana.
Yeah.
Who am I?
Who am I?
And I tell you, Shaykh, the moment you and I realize that, or whoever realizes that, it's like a bulb is turned on. It's like, oh my God, I am the creature and I have a Lord, our Creator above me. Yeah. And I think that's really fascinating. And
that's the Sahaba, isn't it? What was Sahaba? They were people who had that moment, like I have a purpose. They were guided through Islam or the Quran or an experience. The beautiful point Brother Yusuf mentioned was people are different. Some may be more emotional, some may be more intellectual, some may be a mixture, different. And that's how Islam is. It engages people at all levels. Whether you want the intellectual part, whether you want the books and the reading and the research, or whether you want to see people and the character of the Prophet ﷺ and how the Muslims treated others. And actually, I was actually reading a book and it was talking about how a gentleman from this, British English background, he engaged with somebody from Pakistan or what became Pakistan, who lived between the transition between the old India into the independence in 1947. And when he went to that community to speak to this person and write about his journey, the journey of Ghiyas Siddiqui,
yes,
a very British activist. I don't know if you know the book, and it's published by Beacon Books, very good book. And for the so the Pakistani Indian diaspora, I think is really good. We read these kind of books and realize what happened to some part of that journey. But what he said was, because I was going interviewing him and talking to him, but I felt so welcome, like by the community. Wherever I went, it was easy. It was nice to get along with, and I never felt out of place. And he actually describes his journey. It's a really good book because he doesn't just talk about it from perspective of this is his story. No, this is my story of telling his story.
Correct,
right?
correct. Wow.
And he mentions it like, I was postmodernist and I had these ideas, but I took that out of my mind. And that's really important because that's what we were talking about today, that we need to provide that, open the door as it is, right? Provide the space for people, Muslims, non-Muslims, everybody, to engage with us, with the community, whether you're from the subcontinent, whether you're from parts of Africa or the Middle East, or let's say Turkey or Central Asia. Look, the Malaysia, Indonesia, we've had that mention. Strip all of the culture out, it goes down to the one thing we're talking about: Islam, but meaning and purpose and life, which we're all searching for.
So you come back to Manchester, right? Now you're living life, you're doing your thing, and then tell us what happens. What happens in that particular interactions or lack of real engagement per se with the larger community?
Yeah, so before I went, obviously I could relate very much to pretty much everyone around me because we all had very similar experiences. We'd lived in the same place, we had the same problems. Like a lot of my friends grew up in like single parent families. We all had some sort of relationship with drugs and or alcohol, and with family members that were having problems with it and gambling and this and that. So I could relate to them a lot, and I didn't feel that different from everyone else. But then when I was traveling, I traveled for 1.5 years. I'd been to I don't know however many countries I'd been to. And in that 1.5 years, I had probably more experiences than I'd had in my entire life beforehand. And it felt like more than 1.5 years. Like it felt like an eternity that I'd been gone. And then when I came back, no one else had really had many different experiences. Everyone was still working the same job. They were still going to the same places, doing the same things. Things hadn't really changed for everyone else. And so when I came back, I felt very different, not necessarily in a good way or in a better way. And I had a lot that I wanted to talk about because I did experience a lot, and I was excited to talk to people about it. And in my head, it was going to be like fun telling people these stories. But then it started feeling weird. It started feeling like I was sort of showing off a little bit. It started to feel like maybe other people don't necessarily want to hear these stories because it might make them feel bad if they've not had that opportunity, or for whatever reason they just can't go traveling. And that could, it's not necessarily because of something bad that they did. It's just that maybe
The
their job.
circumstances.
Yeah,
the
the
finances.
circumstances, the finances, other commitments, responsibilities. Other people, for example, committed to driving. Cars are expensive, petrol. I was a full-time pedestrian. I didn't have anything.
Co-pedestrian right there.
MashaAllah. Yeah, so, and I only got my license like 2 years ago.
Only 1 year ago.
MashaAllah. So,
There you go. Really
and
something in common there.
but because of that, I had money that I could spend on traveling, whereas other people had money and they would spend it on cars.
I still don't have money.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, but you still spend a lot somehow.
And so, and there was a weird thing of like wanting to share these experiences with other people and like wanting to quote unquote inspire them. And then like this sort of fight with my ego where there was an element where I was kind of showing off like, oh, look at like even now, like,
Well,
look at these pictures of me with a tiger.
why would you want to talk about your amazing year and a half?
Well, that's the thing.
people around
It's
you.
quite a normal thing.
Yeah,
If you do
exactly.
something cool, you want to tell everyone.
Of course you do.
But as well with that, the nafs
Obviously, the nafs
inevitably creeps
is
in.
gonna get you.
Yeah, and I could see that, and I could see I was annoying people. I could see in some way maybe I could have made someone jealous, and that might rub them the wrong way. It feels like I'm rubbing it in their face, and they can't have it. But it's difficult if you're not in everyone's head to recognize who's going to react that way until you've already done it.
And it's also, it's also part of our tradition. If you go into communities and if you go into societies, this is part of our sunnah of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He was very careful that people who lived an opulent life, people who had more money or wealth and etc., that they would be careful when they were around individuals who didn't have that.
Yeah.
So they didn't make them feel bad.
Yeah,
Right?
But the thing is, it wasn't even about the money because at that point I didn't have any money. I was
Yeah.
poor. I'd spent it all. I
No,
was,
it's your experience. What I'm saying.
yeah. So the thing, the wealth here was the experience.
It was experience. Yeah.
Wealth of experience.
Yeah. And there was this battle with my NAFTA, and it got to a point where I didn't get joy in sharing it anymore. And I became very depressed because I'd had these things, and I didn't feel like I could fit in anymore. And I tried getting the exact same job that I had before I'd left back, and my bosses were people that had less experience than me in the same company.
When you went back, yeah.
And and not just that, when I got the job back, they gave it me at much less. So like when I left, I was on something like 24K a year. When I went back, they'd put me on contract with an agency, and I was on like 10 grand.
So how much did that make you feel?
Horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't nice. I was doing the
And
same.
you're going to blame the immigrants for taking your job?
No, it didn't get to that point. Alhamdulillah. But it was, it was just, it felt
No, I'm
like,
saying it's the system's not fair, or it's not.
well,
you
not
know.
just that. It's like I took all of these steps, and even when I'm telling people about the amazing stories, in the back of my head, there was a lot of horror stories as well. There was a lot of, like there was death, there was drugs, there was overdoses, there was a lot of scary things. There was near-death experiences.
And I bet you do not have a single photo of that experience, but you have every experience, or majority.
Yeah,
of
so
the
there's
photos
pictures
are
of tigers.
positive,
Yeah,
are positive.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
all
yeah.
about smiling. It's all about laughing. No one knows behind the camera.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just reality of
because
life.
you're trying to portray, and this is what we do. We're always trying to portray our best selves, and
So because you are having this internal conflict now,
yeah,
right? I've got this experience at the start. I'm not being treated in the same way. This is going on. I'm showing this, but in reality, there's something else going on. You fell into a very odd place.
yeah.
Right.
Things started feeling pointless. Things started because like there's much of a great experience that I'd had that was very much polluted or robbed by the negative experiences of it. It was hard to sort of like just present the good without presenting the bad, but then the bad as well was quite depressing in some sense. And it was you're trying to sort of like battle with when it's appropriate to talk about it and when it's not. It just got to a point where I sort of give up on it. I quit my job. I moved out because I was living with my brother and a lot of his friends. And they were just doing the same things I always used to do. They used to drink, talk about dunya stuff.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be around that anymore, and there was like a very strong sort of push force, I'll say,
Yeah.
which sort of made me want to move away from that. So I ended up getting a house on my own. At the same time, my brother had gotten a puppy and decided he wanted to get rid of it, but I developed a relationship with the dog.
The dog will started, yeah.
So I ended
You
up
kept the
with
dog for how long?
I kept the dog. I still got the dog. But
Really?
it's he lives with my sister now
Oh, wow.
in Kent. He's called Sausage.
So has that been like, what, 10 years?
2014.
Yeah, 12 years. 11, sorry.
11 years. So yeah, I basically just sort of isolated myself, and I cut off a lot of my connections. And it was around about that time I'd started engaging with the Quran again,
Yeah, okay.
reading it for another time, looking into things like Christianity and Judaism and Hinduism. I got very much into like New Age religion. I was reading books by like Eckhart Tolle and Ram Dass.
Yes,
and all
you
of
went into.
and obviously because I'd spent a lot of time in Buddhist temples, I was very interested in Buddhism.
Buddhism.
I was going to Buddhist temples in Manchester. There's one in the town centre.
Okay.
I was going there, and I was just trying to like figure out, what am I now? Like, who am I? What, you know, is it the Jackie Chan? Who am I? Who am I? And trying to figure all of that out.
I am me.
And there was just too much information. There was too much going on in my head, and I sort of gave up dealing with it, and I fell into a bit of like a nihilistic state. And then at that point, I'm trying to battle with all of this information and figure out how to analyze it. And then I think at some point in that depressing experience, I prostrated, and then I'd made a request that, you know, God, if you are real, whatever it is that you are, guide me to truth.
Wow.
And then I was
Very
looking
powerful.
into these things, and I pretty much at that point, that's all I did. It was just looking into religion and thinking about the pros and the cons of this and of that argument, and trying to weigh it all up in my head.
So you went into this, you asked from here, but this wouldn't let you go. This kept on pushing certain views and ideas. Maybe this, can't be this, possibly this, why this, why do you want to do this, what's the reason, you've had this experience, you're a Catholic, you are that, you are this, you're an Englishman, you're Polish, you are Scottish, how dare you become Muslim, what's wrong with you, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, essentially.
So what happens then?
So
When does it become a state of your heart?
So it was a bit of both, because I was thinking about what I did believe, and I think at that point as well, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos with Speakers Corner, the Dawah guys, and I read the Quran again, and it was a strange thing, because the first time I read the Quran, I mentioned I read it as an atheist, so it felt like it was shouting at me. The second time I read it, which was around this time, I was a lot more open to the idea of God, and so I was reading it not as an atheist but as an agnostic. So
It was more like,
it was like a different book.
Yeah.
Different verses shone out as significant to me. The ones that were sort of shouting at the disbelievers sort of faded into the back, because it didn't feel like it was talking to me.
this is why the Quran is called Quran. Again, read it again and again and again, and the way you read it, exactly how it should be read, with understanding.
Yeah.
We read it, but without understanding.
I was reading the
Engagement.
translation.
You've got to
It's an
engage
engagement.
with the Quran, yeah.
So
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure it out. But it's not just that as well. Like I say, I was going to Buddhist temples as well. I was.
you're discovering yourself. Now, let me share something with you. What I find within converts, which is amazing, which is powerful. One of our issues we have is that we have the same problem of nihilism within ourselves as Muslims. But because we say we have Islam, we have Salah, we have fasting, we have this, we mask it. But the reality is this: we are also coming across the same type of cultures, same type of behaviors, same type of, onslaught of information, hyper, information.
But this is a big part of the secularism issue.
There you said it.
Yeah.
So I walk outside my house, my daughter, my wife, my family, my dad, mom, dad, brother, sister, they're going through the same state. But problem is that we have a tendency not to call it that, because we have a tendency to say, no, I have Islam, I have La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. But 1 minute, that's your tongue. What's your heart saying?
Yeah.
You have conflicting within yourself.
Yeah, and they're not willing to. And this also links to what I'm doing now, so I work with Sapiens Institute. I manage the Lighthouse Mentoring Project.
And I thought, for me, when you mentioned that, I looked into that. Is a powerful, amazing project that you're part of, and you have developed and made into something. And I want you to generally tell us what this is.
Yes, it's a service specifically to help people. There's 3 categories of the service. One is doubt mentoring. Quite self-explanatory. People that are doubting Islam and have issues with it.
No doubt, there's one.
Yeah.
It's Fuad Taslim who's wrote that book, hasn't it?
Shaykh Fahad Taslim from Texas in the United States wrote the book. There's also a course for it. Again, you can get access to all of them for free. All of it's free. The courses are free. The books are free. sapiensinstitute.org. You can see it all there. Lighthouse Mentoring is also free. So you can book a one-to-one meeting with one of our mentors.
So that's to like talk to somebody on one personal level,
so
get to know them, what their issues are, and then help them with them.
So it's related. So as well, you've got to be careful because people hear it and they book it for
counselling,
everything. Essentially. I've had people book me.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
So let me but let me share that with you. You understand? Anyone who comes through that, send them towards us.
Yeah.
Right? There's a reason we say it, and this is something that I always say to people. I go, that door, go and knock on that door. That will deal with this.
Yeah.
But you also know now we're here. We deal with that side, right, of issues, anxieties, phobias, people who have underlying other issues or concerns that go into addictions, relationship problems. We have fiqh problems and stuff like that we can deal with, you understand? That's our world. This is why we associate, we engage, we talk, we converse, because everyone has their own expertise and background and knowledge. And that was yours. So through Lighthouse.
There are 3 categories.
So the doubt mentoring to someone is, and this could be anyone. So it could be a born Muslim who's starting to lose faith. For whatever reason. It could be someone who's not a Muslim, who's doubting Islam, but for some reason there's an interest in it.
And they want to know more.
And they're trying to understand it and figure out what Islam is exactly. It could be someone that's a new Muslim. It could be an ex-Muslim, someone that used to be a Muslim and left, but there's a part of them that's fighting that for whatever reason, and they want to make sure they've made the right decision and they need someone to talk to. So that's the doubt mentoring aspect. And we have leadership mentoring. So it's essentially a meeting that someone that is engaging with the first category can book.
To help them train them up and
so they're giving da'wah. Maybe we speak to imams and sheikhs that are being asked certain questions and they're not 100% confident how to deal with it.
Brilliant.
And that's significant because many a time, so in my area of work, because I deal with people who are incarcerated. Now, usually if I go to a person, maybe an imam in the masjid, etc., they don't come across a lot of the issues that I come across, for example. Now, I had to train in that. I had to go away, learn with people like yourself and other individuals who have expertise in them particular areas, all right, to understand where that person is coming from. And so for me, that third part was phenomenal, which I thought was excellent because it what's the word now? It increases the skills. Upskilling, that's the word. Upskilling of people who may have not knowledge, but they do not have the understanding of how to use that knowledge to get to that particular.
One of the issues we find, and a lot of the people that use the service, we've got the Darul Ulooms and people they're being taught the traditional knowledge. Mashallah, it's not a bad thing, but in these systems, they're not really being taught how to deal with a lot of contemporary issues. You're not really learning about atheism and how to deal with the objections the atheists might bring forward. You're not learning how to deal with feminism. It's generally the practice of a lot of these education systems is we've got these particular categories of knowledge we need to teach them. And here you go. We're going to go through Bukhari. We're going to go through...
Historically, Dars-e-Nizami was always a fluid syllabus. It always has been a fluid system. That's why, like for example, we studied mantiq, logic, we studied philosophy, do you understand? We studied so many other subjects. I've studied psychology in ilm al-nafs in Dars-e-Nizami. Do you understand? Now, but of course, it was limited to the basic requirement that we studied astronomy. Why would we study astronomy? Because in the limitation of the knowledge base that we needed for...
But it also comes from a context.
Context.
Like the system that you have now is one that was inherited.
That's right.
So you're looking at great scholars like Ghazali, like he's responding to groups of people.
His time and place. And that's exactly what we are saying here by having you, a certain individuals who's bringing this to reality in front of people. Say, listen, this is also a reality.
I think the lesson is that those curriculums were developed and adjusted for the time and
All the
need.
time.
And what's not happened, I think, in the 21st century is we've got those curriculums in Dar al-Ulooms, in the...
And we have a very different context.
Yeah, and we
we're
have
not
now...
adapting to
'cause
that.
I think there's a lot of globalization. Muslims have traveled and exposed to different ideas and thoughts, and we haven't developed a curriculum, a structure that's educating the people on the front line, which is the imams,
Yeah.
which is the teachers, which is the maulanas, whatever you want to call them, with the skill sets and the know-how of how to actually engage with the current climate that we live in. I mean, some do, some develop. I'm not saying everybody's not hasn't
But
got a
there's
clue.
also a reason for
But
that, though.
yeah, go ahead, Bismillah, talk about that. Talk about that.
So historically, things move very slowly. Like,
Yeah.
there wasn't that much.
100%.
The rate of change wasn't
Yeah.
that
And
drastic.
you can adjust.
Yeah, and like the world that you're inheriting isn't going to be that much different than the world your grandchildren are going to inherit. If we think about even just the world that I've lived in,
Yes.
every decade has been
Our
completely
own
different.
world. Yeah, exactly.
And like I was looking into it. There's a woman that lived to 122. She was born in 1890 something, 1880 something,
Wow.
and she died in 1997. And like that century is mental if you think about like how much things changed over that century. She was born at a time where
Horse and cart, maybe horses.
Yeah.
No communication.
To-
Like, it was like with telegrams and stuff. No phones, no nothing.
And then when she
Yeah.
died, there was the
Yes.
internet. There was
Yeah.
like
There was no probably
Aeroplanes
aeroplanes
got-
exactly, and stuff like that, and bombs and tanks and nothing.
FaceTime or whatever else was like available. Like so the world drastically changed for her.
Yeah, huge.
It's drastically changed for me and for you guys.
And then
Yeah.
look at the last 10 years, and
the
AI is
idea-
out now.
Yeah.
and
Yeah, it's
stuff
the
like
idea of the brain, isn't it? How much it can take. The brain's capacity is around, I believe, it's around 300 bytes, right,
Oh, I mean,
per day or something like that. It is, yeah. But we are being exposed to over 70,000.
yeah, it's a lot of information, and you can't process it all. It's impossible. And but the problem that we're dealing with now in terms of the traditional studies is that what we have is something that was developed during a time when changes occurred very, very slowly, and we've inherited that. And then as well, a lot of the communities that we have for example, in the UK that have emigrated from there, a lot of them were in the beginning manual laborers.
Correct.
So like the first generation of immigrants were
Yeah,
people that
workers,
would do
yeah.
hard labor.
Yeah.
They
100%.
and-
Majority anyway. Yeah.
yeah, and with that, there was a massive culture shock, a huge drastic change. And a lot of the people that came here were people from the villages, people that didn't necessarily come from universities or from an academic background. And then there was a need for a community. We need madrasas. We need
Masajid, yeah.
we need to start teaching them.
Halal food and
And so they just like, who can do it? And if you've in the community, if you've not necessarily got all of the scholars coming over with them,
yeah.
or all of the the people that are very much embedded in the tradition, and they're trying to figure out how to do things in ignorance.
Navigate through, yeah.
And-
It's going to reduce the
Yeah, yeah.
levels and the strength of the next generation in that
Yeah.
particular identity.
And they're demanding things. They're demanding things, and then the scholars follow, and they've come, and people, and we've sent, for example, people have gone over there to study in Syrian and come back, and
Not many.
yeah,
You know,
but it's
compared to the need is not I've gone more have come just directly from there, like from subcontinent or from parts of the world, and they haven't lived here, understand the culture or even the language.
But there's a difficulty that you're facing as well, because a lot of what you're doing is based on the needs of the people.
Correct.
And the people don't necessarily know what they need.
They don't.
They know what they want.
That's right.
Yeah.
We want this, we want this, we want this. And if you don't fulfill what they want,
they're not
then-
going to get what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
but not just that, if you don't tick all of the boxes, it's like, what are you doing here? And they'll just replace you. Because as well, there's a very strange system within a lot of mosques, and it's something quite common that I've had to deal with people that I'm trying to mentor, is this committee system that we have.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that end up in committees that are not scholars.
No basic knowledge of Islam even.
Yeah, and
to a large degree.
the main reason they're in the committees is because they're wealthy.
Yeah, 100%.
And
or,
we need the
or
money
family,
to fund.
or position in community.
There's
or
many
some
different
politics.
reasons.
Yeah,
But they also garner a lot of power at what happens in the masjids.
does.
yeah, they do.
And this causes
100%.
problems.
Yeah,
And this
But
has
huge.
always been,
It has been a.
and it has always been, and this is why scholars, imams, people who have come from and who have knowledge, understanding, some have turned away, some have made their own institutes,
Yeah.
some have created their own structures, to understand. Some of the individual, for example, people who have converted and come into these places, we have Sheikh Ibrahim, Sheikh Bilal, who's going to be coming, inshallah ta'ala, in a
New
few weeks,
beginnings,
inshallah, new beginnings. And he deals with a lot of converts, do you
Yeah.
understand? And a similar experience, maybe you also have had in these particular communities, cultures, right? For a person who wants the truth and wants to engage with the truth, this is just horrific, the whole situation.
It causes a lot of problems, and it's going to impact giving the community what they need, because it's not necessarily the scholars that are trying to diagnose this with hikmah
Yeah.
and applying things in a proper way. You've got a lot of people that have no connection to the tradition whatsoever, making massive decisions that affect the community at large. If an imam says something that this person doesn't want to hear, they can get removed.
They can.
And just replaced with
exactly.
someone that will fit.
That's how it works.
And so just sort of linking it to, because we were talking about the massive tangents there.
Yeah,
before.
your
No,
three,
no, no, it's all
three
good.
areas. So
It's all good, it's
One
all
was
Yeah,
the,
so,
the,
but-
the dart mentoring. One
Yeah,
was
yeah.
the upskilling training of people.
The
in
imams
field.
and the leaders and
the
or
third-
developing
you didn't
leaders.
mention the third one.
The third one is new Muslim mentoring.
new Muslim mentoring.
So someone has
Just new
become a Muslim
yeah.
and they're a bit lost, they don't know where to begin, that kind of
Right.
thing. They can book a meeting. All of it's private. It's all
Yeah.
done via Zoom.
Yeah.
It's not made public, so the recordings are there just for safety and
Yes.
And safeguarding.
yeah. The data protection's very strict.
100%.
Yes,
yeah.
we-
Above board, yeah.
fully
But
aware.
it's a private meeting, 1-to-1, completely anonymous, and no one else ever hears about it. And the whole point of it is to try and to help people overcome a lot of the problems that they don't feel like that they can communicate to their community, whether that's someone that's suffering from doubts. They don't feel like they can go and talk to mum and dad about it. They don't think they can, or if they do go to the imam's not necessarily equipped, and he says, just have faith.
Yeah.
How dare you ask a question? This takes you outside of the thought. And they're not, and half of the time, they don't even bother to recognize the distinction between someone that has a question, someone that has a shubuhat, and someone that's just got waswas.
Yeah.
And this book it goes on about the
Yeah.
importance of understanding the
Understanding
distinction
the person
between,
you're speaking to. Yeah.
and a lot of community
I
leaders.
suppose there's a level of, this is where it comes to the upskilling, psychology needed as well on
Yes.
behalf of the imam or the teacher or the advisor. It could be anybody to understand the one they're speaking to.
Yes, yeah, but also to understand themselves, because a lot of people, they get anxious when people come to them with a shubuhat or with
That's
a question
right,
if they
that's
don't
yeah,
know.
Okay.
And a part of it can sometimes, it's not necessarily in every case, a part of it could be a nafs problem. If someone asks me this question
I don't know the answer.
and I don't know the
wanna ask
answer, how
anybody
silly
else.
am I
Yeah,
going to look?
Okay, yeah.
And a part of that could be just a sort of knee-jerk reaction to say, don't bother asking that question.
Yeah.
They
Which
don't
will
want
put
to-
off the person who's going to come.
Yeah.
That completely messes everything up.
Yeah.
Yes,
You
yeah,
understand?
yeah.
So, Alhamdulillah, may Allah give you, as our audience are listening to this, and inshallah they'll be listening in the future as well, bismillah ta'ala, as you can see, Sidi Yusuf has so much experience in so many areas. And let me share with you, this guy is not an old man. He's a young man as they come. I have more than 10, 12 years on him. Do you understand? And this is phenomenal. And it's all, and I've got to give it to him, mashallah, is that he has made his life, and this is why I wanted to bring this out, and Shaykh wanted to have this conversation with him, is through your journey. It's how to link that with our lives. In a few moments, inshallah, we'll be ending our conversation because Maghrib is also upon us. But I want both of you, Shaykh, that are sitting in front of me, to give a powerful message from your own perspectives to tie this up, because I am going to say this, that hopefully we can have another conversation with you in the future regarding, because it's a whole area of nihilism, all right, which needs to be discussed, talked about, and understood. And there's a part of it was about your own state of nihilism and how you moved from there, and then what you did, which I think will really resonate with a lot of converts. You know, this idea of, I will always make it out, I was a vegetarian. I was a vegetarian. Secretively, I was a Muslim, but I didn't want to make it out because I would be seen or observed. So I think there's a lot from you. Wallahi, Allah give you barakah, inshallah ta'ala. Allah give you strength. We are immensely grateful that you've come onto this particular platform, alhamdulillah, and you have shared your thoughts, you've shared your experience, inshallah ta'ala. So, what will be your thoughts and reflection regarding our audience, inshallah? Shaykh first, and then
Yeah, okay, Bismillah. First of all, I'd like to thank Brother Yusuf for coming on and accepting our invite and giving us your time. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Sheikh Imran, for everything you've done today and led the conversation. Our studio, hiding behind the cameras, smiling away, doing great work and helping out. Allah bless them all. It's been nice. But just on the conversation, I'm not going to touch on any particular point. I just think that the conversation has been very important. And there's so many things there that are relevant to, I'd say, Muslims in the Western Hemisphere, the challenges we face. Everybody's got different, demographics and background issues. But I think a lot of what we've spoken about today is very relevant to our audience here at Guidance Hub. I think the Muslim community in the UK in particular, I think that we want you to engage with us more. Like, you must have 101 questions and thoughts and ideas and wants, and like you said, we need something, but wait a minute, what do I need to help me in my journey in Islam? I always thought I want this, I want that, or I think I need this. But drop us a line, talk to us, engage with us so that we can go on that journey together. This whole idea of what Brother Yusuf is that supporting and mentoring, and that's what all
and bringing him
organizations should be doing. The masajid, community organizations. And I really felt a lot of hurt in your heart, by the way. I felt it, believe it or not, when you talked about the masajid and they're not doing the right thing. And I can resonate with that. I feel, and I'm sorry to finish on this note, but we're wasting a huge resource. We're literally throwing millions of pounds down the drain, and we're not helping the Muslims, the 15-year-old, 18-year-old, the 20-year-old who needs you in the masjid or committees or imams, or, to engage with them and to talk to them and be polite to them and be welcoming and do stuff with them.
We have a great opportunity coming up, inshallah ta'ala, in about 4 or 5 weeks' time, inshallah, a podcast with an individual who's the head of Muslim councils, council of mosques.
Okay.
So I'm approaching him at the moment, inshallah ta'ala, with your
this
request.
Is what we need. This is what we need to have.
We will have them where you are, Sidi. So maybe you can also engage with that person and ask them questions directly, who has a certain individual under him. So the stage is yours. The stage is yours.
Yes, Allah says in the Quran about sometimes you may like something that is bad for you, and sometimes you may dislike something which is good for you.
Yeah.
And and I think a massive part, and it's not new. This is something humans have constantly had to deal with. It's something Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had to deal with the people he was calling to, and it was the case for every prophet before him, and it's going to be the case for us now. And it's not all doom and gloom. I don't want to sound like I'm just this sort of armchair critic. Like, I'm actively trying to think of solutions and help people overcome certain obstacles and things like that. And I'm here to engage. And if people want to invite me, I'm inshallah, available to try and help in whatever way I can. But the issue is that there's a lot of self-reflection we all need to be, myself included, on how we can improve and how we can engage with each other and what we can do to fix certain problems. But like I say, it's not all doom and gloom. There is so many people that they want to do something, they're just not quite sure what to do. And this is the whole point of the mentoring service. We're here to help people think of how to set up a vision, how to set up a strategy, how to move forward, how to contribute and engage, and to call people to Islam, whether that's the non-Muslim community that you're surrounded by, and how can you do that? What things are getting in the way of that? And this is where we're talking about birds of a feather flock together. There's certain obstacles that we put in place that might stop that from happening. And you're gonna, by working together, we can get insights into each other's communities. Like, for example, when I first became a Muslim, I was embedded mainly within the Pakistani community, and there's a lot of things that I just didn't know about the Pakistani community. There's a lot of habits that I had that they were uncomfortable with, and I didn't understand that. And there's maybe you would step on some toes by accident without realizing it, but there's also a lot they don't understand about my community, about where I came from, because they are in their own little bubbles, and I was in my bubble. And you have got these sort of bridge people that are in two worlds, and they're trying to navigate between these different spaces and figure out how to maximize, I guess, the benefit we can have for all of them. And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was sent here as a guidance for all of mankind.
Correct.
And that's the Muslims, but it's also for the non-Muslims. How do we help them come to Tawheed? How do we help them to improve themselves? There's a lot that harms them. The community I grew up in, we were very much hurting as a result of our own actions, as a result of drugs, alcohol, gambling, debt, zina. Pretty much everyone of my friends growing up were the products of zina. Fathers that just were not about, were either in prison, dead, or not available. And these things, obviously, a big part of these things is that Islam is very strict about how you engage in all of these things. And a big thing that made me become a Muslim was really reflecting on that and thinking, why do I have such a problem with these rules? And I would ask myself, would my community be better or worse if we implemented Islam in our lives? Would my community be better or worse if we didn't drink alcohol? And we chose that for ourselves. If we didn't take drugs, if we didn't commit zina, if we didn't take loans out with debt, if we didn't, X, Y, and Z, whatever, all of these things that Islam is commanding. Honestly, if we practice this, would we be in a better or worse place? And when I'm looking at a lot of the problems, a lot of it is caused by our own hand. Even when they're complaining about immigrants, this fear of being replaced, it works two ways. It's not just that the Muslims, mashallah, are having lots of children. It's also that they're not having any children. Their birth rates are plummeting. If you look at Korea,
That's right.
0.7. They're well below replacement.
That means the population is going down, right?
Yeah, drastically, very quickly.
They are asking for men donors,
Yeah.
sperm donors, to come into the country.
Yes.
That's how far they've gone.
No, but check this as well. So in terms of the UK, Brexit was very much, the whole conversation was around immigration. The right wing was voting on whether or not they wanted immigrants in, and that's what it boiled down to. And the left wing were voting on not wanting to look like right wing. And it's essentially all it
It's
was.
horrendous, yeah.
But since Brexit, immigration's increased. They didn't
has.
get what they wanted.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is because the economy needs people.
To work, yeah.
But they're not having children themselves. And a lot of them are not willing to work certain jobs because they see it as below themselves. Like a lot of people would rather be on benefits than work in McDonald's because it's seen as like a lowly job.
And if you can get a freebie, why work? Yeah.
Yeah. And the issue is that the economy needs people that are spending money, that are working, that are contributing to the economy. And that money needs to flow in order for the economy not to stagnate. In the same way water needs to move, money needs to. But that needs people. And unfortunately, the indigenous population just do not want to have children because what they value most isn't Allah, isn't sacrifice, isn't community. It is individualism. It is, and unfortunately, this
Nihilism, right? There you go.
Well, they don't realize there's nihilism that underpins a lot of it. But if you ask them, they say freedom, they say liberty. It's individualism. It's self-expression. It's all about me, and it's why.
Hedonistic.
Yeah, and it's why they're not having children because children they come into conflict with these values. Children require sacrifice. Children mean that your time isn't your own anymore. You can't just drop the hat whenever you want and go off traveling. Your money isn't your own. You're going to be working, and the majority of your money is getting spent on other people, the family. And I think a big part of the fact that people value these things more than anything else makes them look at things like having children and having a family as a bad thing. And even their elderly, what do they do with their elderly? The majority of them just get pushed off into care homes. Why? Because again, it comes into conflict with these major values: freedom, liberty, individualism. And if I look after mum and dad, I can't do whatever I want, and I've got limited time here. And unfortunately, Muslims are being heavily affected by this as well. And Muslims don't want to have children. Muslims don't want to
look after the parents.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah, it's not as bad within the Muslim community because we're
creeping in.
Yeah, and you can see it more and more with the third, fourth generations than you do with the first and second. And it's because we're sort of, as much as we try to stay different, we are being affected by it, and we are becoming like them. And there needs to be a big push, and there is still, and the UK Muslims in particular, the global community. I have heard it many times from many people from all over the world. They do have an admiration for the British Muslim community because there is something about the British dawah that is distinct in some way from other places in the world.
There is an essence of understanding that the host community is not too different to us. I'm third, fourth generation, many of us that are sitting here are third, fourth generation, to understand. There are many aspects and elements of the larger community, the host community, which we are part and parcel of. And the point is very clear, that our attitude towards the host community is not of other, is us.
Yeah.
Because they are us, they are our brothers and sisters, they are our elders. And that's really shocking sometimes. You know, I deal with 90% of all of the people I deal with are all non-Muslims. I'm a chaplain. And 90% of the issues I deal with, 90% of the people I deal with, firstly are non-Muslims, are people from the indigenous community, right? If you may call them indigenous, because even they are migrants, we can talk about that historically.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, that's my experience. And the way I see them, they are my brothers, they are my sisters in the human family. And according to our theological understanding, they are ummatun da'wah, and there is ummatun ijaba. Ijaba is the one that has accepted Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as the Prophet. And ummatul da'wah is the ummah that is open to the invitation itself. And Sidi, you have said, mentioned, put our head straight. Wallahi, you really have. You know, Allah elevate you, increase you with your family, with your children, with your wife. Alhamdulillah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy upon all of your family and all the loved ones that you have, inshallah ta'ala. And all our listeners, you got to keep an eye out and ear out for this space, because we are going to invite this Sayyidi Yusuf Ponders again, inshallah. It's been an honor to have you, alhamdulillah. You have been listening to GuidanceCast, and we have been honored with none other than Sayyidi Yusuf Ponders. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa
Assalamu
rahmatullahi wa
alaikum.
barakatuh.